Please wake up, I whispered, gazing at my husband's serene face as he lay in his casket. His peaceful expression almost fooled me into thinking he was merely asleep, ready to stir at any moment. Well, off I go, his cheerful voice echoed in my mind, bidding farewell to me and our daughter before embarking on his business trip just 2 days prior. Little did I know it would be the last time I hear his voice. His sudden departure from this world by his own hand left me in disbelief. No matter how desperately I called out to him, he remained silent, his once warm presence now as cold as ice. As I struggled to come to terms with the grim reality, something caught my eye. A solitary photograph resting on his chest. It was a family picture, but one I didn't recall placing there. Who could have placed it, and why? Intrigued and unnerved, I picked up the photo, turning it over to find a chilling message scrawled on the back. "Run away now." A shiver ran down my spine as I turned to find my mother-in-law's cold gaze fixed upon me. In that moment, I realized I had unwittingly stumbled into a nightmare from which there was no easy escape. I'm Bella, 32 years old, and my journey through life has been marked by both tragedy and love. Losing both my parents in a car accident while I was still in college left me feeling utterly alone in the world. The weight of grief seemed insurmountable. Fortunately, John, my boyfriend at the time, became my pillar of support. After graduating, we tied the knot, finding solace and happiness in each other's company. Our little family expanded with the arrival of our daughter, Hannah, who brought immeasurable joy into our lives. Our family circle extended to include my mother-in-law and brother-in-law, forming a tight-knit support system. Sadly, the passing of my father-in-law a year ago left a void in our hearts. His sudden demise, attributed to what was initially termed an illness but revealed to be a fatal heart attack, shook us all profoundly. Despite the loss, financial worries never haunted us, thanks to the prosperous business my in-laws managed. Originally, my father-in-law had envisioned his capable and compassionate younger brother taking the reins as CEO. However, fate intervened, claiming him before his plans could materialize. Consequently, the responsibility fell upon my brother-in-law, the eldest son, to lead the family's business legacy forward. Dad wanted me to take over, but I couldn't possibly do that over my older brother. I'll support him. My husband's reverence for his brother ran deep, leading him to gracefully step aside from the CEO position. His respect for family hierarchy was unwavering. My brother-in-law, in turn, displayed a genuine kindness towards me, often engaging in friendly conversations. While our bond blossomed, my interactions with my mother-in-law were marked by a noticeable strain. Initially, my mother-in-law extended warmth towards me, even bonding over cooking sessions, expressing how much she cherished our time together. Her affectionate gestures painted a picture of familial harmony. However, with my father-in-law's passing, a frosty silence enveloped her demeanor. Both my husband and I felt the chill of her withdrawal, her once warm gaze now evading ours. Even our daughter, Hannah, accustomed to adoration as the first grandchild, faced her grandmother's icy reception, met with disapproving glances and curt responses. "She used to be such a sweet person before," my husband lamented, his disappointment palpable. Witnessing his distress, my heart ached with sympathy. "Something seems off about Mom," my husband voiced his concerns, furrowing his brows in deep contemplation. "She's glaring at me as if I'm her enemy. Could she think we're after her assets? Or maybe she's unwell?" Despite his introspection, he couldn't pinpoint a plausible explanation for her sudden change in demeanor. The shift first became apparent during my father-in-law's one-week memorial service. Exhausted from the solemn proceedings, we sought respite at her home. However, our tranquility was shattered when we awoke to find our bag of clothes missing from the room. Could it be a burglary? I pondered aloud, but the selective disappearance of our belongings cast doubt on that theory. As we scoured the house, a plume of smoke billowed from the backyard, drawing our attention. To our disbelief, we discovered our possessions ablaze, and there stood my mother-in-law. "Mom, did you do this?" we implored, seeking an explanation for her inexplicable actions. But she remained silent, her wide-eyed gaze and trembling hands betraying her fear. "Why, Mom? What have we done to deserve this hostility?" We pleaded for answers, but her lips remained sealed, leaving us grappling with uncertainty and confusion. Despite her stoic silence, John extended a hand of understanding to his mother, his voice laced with gentle reassurance. "You're not worried about us going after your assets, are you? I'm not interested in your possessions. Please believe me, Mother-in-law, we only want what's best for you. However, our pleas fell on deaf ears as mother-in-law icily commanded, "Leave, both of you, and don't return." With heavy hearts, we departed, our once close bond with her fractured, reduced to mere remnants of what it once was. For the past year, we maintained a distant relationship. Our attempts at reconciliation met with resistance from mother-in-law's unwavering animosity. Then, out of the blue, a message from my brother-in-law beckoned us to the first anniversary memorial service for my father-in-law. Despite mother-in-law's continued coldness, we decided to attend, hoping for a glimpse of reconciliation. Yet her aloofness persisted, serving as a painful reminder of the chasm that now separated us. Witnessing John's contemplative expression amid the familial discord, I couldn't help but wonder about the thoughts brewing in his mind. "What's on your mind, John? Are you concerned about your mother?" I inquired softly, sensing the weight of his thoughts. With a gentle touch, John reassured me, "Don't worry, Bella. If there's anything troubling you, just let me know." His tender gesture, brushing away my worries, brought a sense of calm to my troubled heart. His comforting presence was a balm to my anxieties. A month passed, filled with the familiar routines of family life. As John prepared for another business trip, his cheerful demeanor lifted our spirits. However, his sudden return caught me off guard. With a small charm in hand, he bestowed upon me a gesture of protection. His smile, warm and reassuring, filled me with gratitude for the love we shared. Yet the tranquility was shattered by a harrowing turn of events. The next day brought the shocking news of John's untimely death. His lifeless body was discovered in his car on a remote mountain road near my parents' home in Colorado. The circumstances surrounding his demise puzzled and devastated me. Contrary to his claims of a business trip, there were no scheduled engagements. Instead, his final moments were marked by a heart-wrenching call to my brother-in-law, confessing unbearable pain and a desire to end his suffering. The revelation left me reeling with guilt and confusion. I blamed myself for failing to recognize his anguish, grappling with unanswered questions and an overwhelming sense of loss. Beside his lifeless form, I felt my strength waning, but my brother-in-law's steadfast support steadied me in the face of despair. "Stay," he urged, his presence a beacon of solace in the darkness of grief. "Bella, stay strong." My brother-in-law's voice wavered with emotion, mirroring the turmoil in my own heart. I wish I had understood John's pain better. Why did this happen? The weight of sorrow bore down on me, compounded by Hannah's tears as she clung to me for solace. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law's stoic glare offered no comfort, her expression devoid of tears. Amidst our collective grief, my brother-in-law and John's colleagues took charge of the funeral arrangements, their somber efficiency a stark contrast to the overwhelming emotions engulfing me. "Please wake up," I whispered to John on the day of his funeral, his serene visage in the casket belying the finality of his passing. It felt as though he could stir from slumber at any moment, if only I called out to him. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I held on him tightly, seeking refuge in his familiar presence. In the midst of my sorrow, a glimmer of curiosity stirred within me as I noticed a lone photograph resting on John's chest. Who had placed it there, and what significance did it hold in this moment of profound loss? Intrigued, I lifted the photograph, only to find John's face marred by ruthless slashes from a cutter. My heart quickened as I read the ominous message scrawled on the back. "Run away now." Questions swirled in my mind. Who was the intended recipient of this chilling warning? As a shiver ran down my spine, I turned to find my mother-in-law's icy stare fixed upon me, her gaze piercing through me with unnerving intensity. Could she be involved? The tension thickened as she hastily looked away upon meeting my gaze, sparking a surge of suspicion within me. Discreetly, I slipped the photograph into the pocket of my dress, determined to unravel the mystery. In the aftermath of the funeral, amidst the quietude that followed, my thoughts kept returning to the cryptic message on the photograph. Though the sender remained elusive, the initials "S" hinted at a possible connection. The only "S" I could think of was Scarlett, my mother-in-law. Doubts gnawed at me, challenging the narrative of John's untimely demise. Desperate for answers, I resolved to confront my mother-in-law, bracing myself for the confrontation ahead. As I stepped into her home, my mother-in-law's demeanor remained as frosty as ever. With my brother-in-law absent at work, it was just the two of us in the solemn silence. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" she inquired, her tone guarded. "I was hoping to uncover some insights into John's passing." Perhaps there's a clue here in his childhood home, I replied, my words tinged with uncertainty. Lacking the courage to confront her directly, I found myself fabricating a reason for my visit. Searching for a distraction, my gaze wandered to the towering bookshelf dominating the living room. A testament to the family's love for literature, it housed not only novels but also encyclopedias and dictionaries. Among them, I spotted a few volumes from John's student days, evoking a wave of nostalgia. Curiosity getting the better of me, I reached for a couple of books, each adorned with a stamped initial indicating ownership. Beside John's J was a small, endearing image of a cuddling cat. The sight warmed my heart, a reminder of his gentle nature that always brought a smile to my face. As I perused the books, I couldn't shake off the palpable weight of my mother-in-law's gaze boring into my back. Amidst the sea of familiar titles, one book stood out, still clad in its cover. As I gingerly opened it, I discovered a tome on poisonous plants, its pages adorned with numerous post-it notes. My heart skipped a beat as I stumbled upon a note detailing the very poison that claimed my husband's life. The book bore a stamp of ownership, a damning piece of evidence that left me reeling. Summoning all my courage, I turned to my mother-in-law, brandishing the book before her. Her stoic facade crumbled as tears streamed down her face. I'm the one responsible. Please forgive me, she choked out amidst sobs. The revelation sent shockwaves through me, but there was no time for hesitation. We need to inform the authorities, I insisted, my voice trembling with urgency. With a heavy heart, I relayed the truth to the police. As I grappled with the gravity of the situation, my brother-in-law arrived home, oblivious to the turmoil that had unfolded. Concern etched upon his features, he questioned the somber atmosphere, his eyes darting between me and my tearful mother-in-law. What's happened? Why is Bella here? Please tell me, he implored, his voice laced with apprehension. I wanted to talk to my mother-in-law about my husband, I stammered, my words faltering as I struggled to find the right way to broach the subject. Understanding washed over my brother-in-law's face as he listened. Losing him must have been incredibly difficult for you. Are you feeling any better now, Bella? He inquired gently, his concern palpable. Unable to meet his gaze, I hesitated, grappling with the weight of unspoken truths. Before I could utter a word, my brother-in-law's unexpected confession caught me off guard. I know this isn't the time, but I've always harbored feelings for you, Bella. And Hannah, she's just so precious to me. Would you ever consider giving us a chance, starting anew? His words hung in the air, surprising me with their sincerity. I never imagined my brother-in-law harboring such feelings. Thank you, but I can't even fathom such thoughts right now, I replied, my voice tinged with gratitude and regret. Understanding flickered in his eyes as he accepted my response. Awkwardly scratching his head, he took the photograph from my outstretched hand. I'm sorry, he murmured, his gaze falling upon the image of my husband's battered face and the ominous message scrawled on its reverse. As the reality of the photograph's contents sank in, my brother-in-law's complexion paled, a gasp escaping his lips. This was inside John's coffin. Who could have done such a thing? His shock mirrored my own as we grappled with the sinister implications of the discovery. It's possible that someone at the funeral knows what happened to John, I mused aloud, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together in my mind. Wait a moment. John took his own life, so there's no perpetrator to speak of, I reasoned, trying to quell the rising unease. However, my brother-in-law appeared perplexed, his agitation palpable as he shifted uneasily. But in my dreams, John's voice echoes, accusing someone of betrayal and expressing hatred. I divulged, watching as his eyes widened in shock, his features contorting with alarm as if confronted with a horrifying revelation. And I found this, I continued, retrieving the damning evidence from the living room bookshelf. As I handed him the book on poisonous plants with incriminating notes, his expression morphed into one of profound concern, realizing the gravity of the situation. I presented the book on poisonous plants that I had discovered earlier, pointing out the bookplate bearing my brother-in-law's name, indicated by the stamped letter K. What are you insinuating? Are you suggesting that I murdered my own brother? My brother-in-law demanded, his voice tinged with disbelief. Instead of answering, I pressed on with my revelation. Beside me, my mother-in-law remained silent, her gaze fixed on the unfolding drama. And there's more, I declared, retrieving the charm my husband had given me. Carefully, I extracted a letter concealed within. Its contents sent shockwaves through the room. My brother killed our father with a poisonous plant. Amidst the somber atmosphere of my husband's funeral, I clung to the charm he had gifted me, finding solace in its tangible reminder of his love. Yes, I held it. A faint suspicion nudged at my consciousness. Could there be something hidden within? From the outer covering. That's hardly substantial evidence, my brother-in-law scoffed dismissively as I retrieved a small object concealed within the charm. Undeterred, I produced my phone and played a video that revealed a damning conversation between my husband and my brother-in-law. In the footage, my brother-in-law confessed to intentionally ending his father's life. He assured my husband that he harbored no ill intent toward our family and vowed to turn himself in to the authorities. It was a shocking revelation that left me reeling with a mixture of regret and fury. My husband, in an act of foresight, had clandestinely recorded the conversation by setting up a camera in their parents' house, a fact detailed in the accompanying letter. As I absorbed the gravity of the situation, my heart burned with a potent blend of emotions. You admitted your crime to my husband, then urged him to turn you in, only to take his life with the same poisonous plant, didn't you? I confronted my brother-in-law, the weight of betrayal heavy in my voice. John trusted you until the very end. Why would you commit such a heinous act? As I pressed him for answers, my brother-in-law's demeanor shifted, his once gentle countenance contorting into a terrifying visage as he clicked his tongue in frustration, his eyes flashing with anger. In that tense moment, my mother-in-law's anguish erupted into tears, her sobs filling the room. Why? How could you do something so cruel? She cried out, her confession echoing the painful truth of her complicity. It dawned on me then, the origins of this tragedy rooted in the bond between the brothers. Despite their closeness in childhood, envy and resentment had poisoned my brother-in-law's heart over time, leading to a series of petty pranks aimed at undermining his talented younger sibling John. My in-laws had always maintained strict discipline with my brother-in-law, aware of his penchant for mischief. Despite this, John never harbored any resentment towards his brother, instead choosing to admire and support him. This unwavering loyalty only deepened my mother-in-law's sense of dismay. Following my father-in-law's sudden demise while tidying the bookshelf, my mother-in-law stumbled upon a book detailing poisonous plants. Despite the diagnosis of a heart attack, John had never displayed any prior heart issues during his medical checkups, leaving me with a lingering sense of unease. It was then that I noticed a bookmark nestled within the book, detailing the exact symptoms my husband had experienced before his passing, a revelation that sent shockwaves through me. Even more alarming was my brother-in-law's intense fascination with the book on poisonous plants, a detail that did not escape my notice. To add to the growing list of unsettling discoveries, my mother-in-law unearthed a photograph of John's disfigured face hidden within the pages of the book, further deepening the mystery surrounding his untimely demise. Despite her suspicions, my mother-in-law hesitated to confront my brother-in-law without concrete evidence, knowing he would likely deny any wrongdoing. At my father-in-law's memorial service, during our visit to the family home, my mother-in-law was visibly shaken to discover my brother-in-law burning our belongings. Fearing for our safety, she chose to distance herself from us, her demeanor growing cold and distant. In a moment of desperation, she confided in me, her voice strained with anguish as she explained her actions. Her face etched with worry lines, I struggled to find the right words to comfort her. Even after we stopped visiting, she recounted, my brother-in-law's behavior grew increasingly ominous. He muttered to himself, I have to do something about John, leaving me deeply concerned. I recounted how I had tried to warn my husband at his first memorial, using the photo phone in the book about poisonous plants as a covert means of communication. I had also whispered to John about the possibility that his brother Ken may have been responsible for their father's death. Unfortunately, it seemed our attempt to warn my husband had backfired. If he hadn't been aware, he might not have confronted my brother-in-law, and perhaps things wouldn't have escalated to this extent. My mother and I were overwhelmed with regret, each of us blaming ourselves for the unfolding tragedy. I struggled to find the right words to respond to her anguish. It's all because our father refused to let me take over the company, my brother-in-law interjected bitterly, deflecting blame onto our deceased father. But John always stood up for you, insisting that he couldn't become president by sidelining you. I couldn't contain my frustration. As if that matters. Both our father and John loved you. There was no need for you to resort to such drastic measures. What's the point now? I exclaimed, my voice tinged with a mixture of anger and despair. Defiantly, my brother-in-law dismissed our accusations with a chilling expression. Blame the parents who favored my younger brother and the facade of the good son John. It's all your fault, he retorted, his words sending shivers down my spine. You've taken away my beloved husband. I'll never forgive you. I seethed, my anger boiling over at my brother-in-law's callous actions. Shut up. If you hadn't interfered, you could have been my wife, he spat back venomously, his words dripping with malice. Suddenly, he lunged at me with a knife he had concealed, the glint of metal sending the chill down my spine. Panicked, I screamed for help and attempted to flee, but he was relentless, swiftly closing the distance between us. With nowhere left to run, I found myself cornered, facing the sharp edge of the blade. Instinctively, I shut my eyes, racing for the worst. Then, a resounding thud echoed through the room as someone intervened to shield me from harm. To my astonishment, it was my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, are you hurt? I gasped, seeing her grimace as blood trickled from her injured arm. Ken, please stop this madness. Turn yourself in, she pleaded, her voice trembling with urgency. Shut up, both of you. You're the ones who need to disappear, my brother-in-law snarled, his rage unabated. Why would you go to such lengths, especially now that you've achieved your dream of becoming CEO? I implored, struggling to understand his motives amidst the chaos. I need money, my brother-in-law confessed, his desperation palpable. Despite assuming control of the company, he lacked the business acumen to manage it, burdening himself with mounting debts within a year. In a desperate bid to alleviate his financial woes, he resorted to taking out a hefty life insurance policy on my husband, his younger brother. It's amusing, really. John believed my lies so easily, even when I pretended to confess, my brother-in-law chuckled bitterly, his laughter tinged with malice. I recoiled in disgust at his callous demeanor, but even in his deceit, he remained cautious, ensuring that John didn't consume the drink he had offered. A toast to our farewell, he sneered, his suspicions of poisonous herbs evident. Yet he did shake John's hand, unwittingly transferring traces of the lethal substance. John had a habit of licking his fingers, you know? So it's no surprise the poison began to take effect during the car ride home, my brother-in-law boasted, his voice filled with a twisted sense of triumph as he brandished a knife before us. Despite everything, my husband still wanted to save you. Why couldn't you understand his compassion? I exclaimed, frustration seeping into my voice. Blame my parents for favoring John over me, my brother-in-law retorted defiantly, deflecting responsibility onto others. As tension reached its peak, the arrival of the police brought an end to the harrowing ordeal. Despite their intervention, my brother-in-law continued to struggle until the very end. My brother-in-law's desperate pleas fell on deaf ears as he gasped and finally succumbed to the authorities, his tumultuous outbursts quelled. Thankfully, my mother-in-law's injury proved to be minor, and she was quickly on the path to recovery. As my brother-in-law was escorted away by the police, it became clear that he harbored no remorse for his actions, leaving little doubt that he would face a lengthy sentence behind bars. With him out of our lives, I found solace in the comfort of my mother-in-law's embrace. Returning to her former self, my mother-in-law showered affection upon my daughter Hannah and me. Together, we forged a sense of familial harmony, finding happiness in each other's company. And as I revisited the letter concealed within the charm my husband had given me, its heartfelt message served as a poignant reminder of his enduring love. Bella, you are my treasure. I love you always. Embracing my husband's enduring affection, I resolved to carry on, finding strength in his unwavering love and the bond shared between us.
The shrill ring of my office phone pierces through the mundane hum of my workday. I pick up the receiver, expecting another client or colleague, but the voice on the other end sends a chill down my spine. It's Everett, my estranged husband, and his tone is anything but friendly. Mallory, we need to talk, he says, his voice dripping with false sincerity. I've made some investments that didn't quite pan out, and well, long story short, we've lost the house. I grip the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. What do you mean, we've lost the house? How could you be so reckless with our home? Everett scoffs, his true colors showing. Oh, don't act so high and mighty. It's not like you've been contributing much lately. Maybe it's time for you to move back to that dingy little hometown of yours and live with your parents. God knows they could use the help at their age. Rage boils inside me. How dare he suggest I burden my elderly parents because of his mistakes? Everett, you can't just make decisions like this without me. We need to talk, face to face. Fine, he spits out. Meet me at the house in an hour. Don't be late. The line goes dead, and I'm left standing there, the dial tone echoing in my ear. My mind races as I grab my purse and head out the door, barely remembering to lock up behind me. The drive to our once shared home is a blur. Memories of happier times flashing before my eyes. When I pull into the driveway, Everett is already there, leaning against his car with a smug look on his face. Well, look who decided to show up, he sneers as I approach. Cut the crap, Everett. What the hell happened? How could you gamble with our future like this? He rolls his eyes. Oh, spare me the lecture. You're hardly one to talk about responsibility. When was the last time you even visited your parents? They're probably wondering if you're still alive. His words cut deep, hitting a nerve I didn't even know was exposed. Leave my parents out of this, I hiss. This is about you and your reckless behavior. Everett steps closer, his eyes narrowing. No, Mallory, this is about you. You and your inability to be a proper wife. Maybe if you'd been more supportive, I wouldn't have had to take such risks. I can't believe what I'm hearing. The audacity of this man to blame me for his own failures. You know what, Everett? I'm done. I'm done with your lies, your manipulation, and your complete disregard for anyone but yourself. I'm going to find a way to fix this mess you've made, and I'm going to do it without you. I turn on my heel and storm back to my car, my heart pounding in my chest. As I peel out of the driveway, I catch a glimpse of Everett in the rearview mirror, his face contorted with rage. But I don't care. I have a new mission now, one that will take me back to my roots and force me to confront the ghosts of my past. I will protect my parents from Everett's twisted games, no matter what it takes. As I merge onto the highway, the city skyline fading in the distance, I feel a sense of determination wash over me. I may be heading back to my hometown, but I'm not the same scared little girl who left all those years ago. I'm a woman on a mission, and heaven help anyone who tries to stand in my way. The winding road leads me back to the place I once called home, a small town nestled in the heart of America. It's been years since I've set foot here, but as I drive past the familiar storefronts and houses, memories come flooding back. I pull up to my childhood home, a modest two-story house with a well-manicured lawn. My parents have always taken pride in their home, despite the hardships they've faced. I take a deep breath and step out of the car, steeling myself for the conversation to come. As I approach the front door, it swings open, revealing my mother's smiling face. Mallory! What a wonderful surprise, she exclaims, pulling me into a warm hug. I return the embrace, feeling a pang of guilt for not visiting more often. Hi, Mom. It's good to see you. Is Dad around? I need to talk to both of you. Her smile falters slightly, sensing the seriousness in my tone. Of course, dear. He's in the living room. Come on in. I follow her inside, taking in the familiar surroundings. The house hasn't changed much over the years, still filled with the same cozy furniture and family photos. My father sits in his favorite armchair, looking up from his newspaper as I enter. Mallory, what brings you home? He asks, a hint of concern in his voice. I settle onto the couch, clasping my hands in my lap. Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you. It's about Everett. I relay the story of Everett's reckless investment and the loss of our home. I watch as their faces shift from shock to anger, their eyes filling with a mix of disbelief and disappointment. How could he do this to you? My mother asks, her voice trembling. After everything you've been through together? I don't know, Mom. But I do know that I can't let him get away with it. I have to protect what's left of our family, and that includes you and Dad. My father leans forward, his brow furrowed. What do you mean, Mallory? We're not the ones in trouble here. But you could be, I insist. Everett is a master manipulator. He'll stop at nothing to get what he wants, even if it means coming after you. That's why I need to make sure this house is secure, legally under my name. My parents exchange a worried glance. Mallory, we appreciate your concern, but we can take care of ourselves, my father says gently. I shake my head, remembering the malice in Everett's voice when he suggested I move back home. No, Dad, you don't know him like I do. He's capable of things you can't even imagine. Please, let me do this for you. Let me keep you safe. Tears well up in my mother's eyes as she reaches for my hand. Oh, Mallory, we never wanted you to have to shoulder this burden. We only ever wanted the best for you. I know, Mom, and I'm going to make sure that Everett pays for what he's done. But first, I need to make sure you and Dad are protected. Will you trust me to do that? They both nod, their faces etched with a mix of love and concern. Of course, dear, we trust you, my mother says softly. As we sit there, holding hands and sharing memories of better times, I feel a renewed sense of purpose. I may have lost my home and my marriage, but I still have my family, and I'll be damned if I let Everett take that away from me too. The road ahead may be long and difficult, but I'm ready to face it head on. With my parents by my side and a fierce determination in my heart, I know I can weather any storm that comes my way. The family lawyer's office is a stark contrast to the cozy warmth of my parents' home. I sit across from the attorney, a middle-aged woman with a sharp gaze and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listens intently as I explain my situation, nodding occasionally and jotting down notes. So, you want to secure your parents' house under your name, correct? She asks, looking up from her legal pad. Yes, I reply, my voice firm. I need to make sure that Everett can't touch it, no matter what he tries. The lawyer leans back in her chair, studying me carefully. It's not going to be easy, Mallory. Everett sounds like a man who doesn't play by the rules, but I'll do everything in my power to help you protect your family. Relief washes over me. Thank you. I know it won't be simple, but I'm ready to fight for what's right. She nods, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I can see that. Now let's talk about the legal proceedings. We'll need to gather evidence of Everett's financial misdeeds and build a strong case for why you should be the sole owner of your parents' house. We spend the next hour going over the details, discussing strategies and potential obstacles. By the time I leave the office, my head is spinning with legal jargon and a mountain of paperwork, but I feel a renewed sense of purpose. Back at my temporary apartment, I pour myself a glass of wine and settle onto the couch, surrounded by boxes of my belongings. It's a far cry from the lavish home I once shared with Everett, but it's a small price to pay for my freedom. As I sip my wine, my phone buzzes with an incoming call. I glance at the screen, expecting to see my mother's name, but instead it's Everett. I hesitate for a moment before answering, steeling myself for whatever lies he's about to spin. What do you want, Everett? I ask, my voice cold. Mallory, darling, is that any way to greet your loving husband? He purrs, his tone dripping with false sincerity. I scoff. You lost the right to call yourself that when you gambled away our future. What do you want? I just wanted to check in on you, see how you're doing in that little hometown of yours. I hope your parents are well. It would be a shame if anything were to happen to them. My blood runs cold at his thinly veiled threat. Listen to me, Everett. If you so much as breathe in the direction of my parents, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life. He laughs, a low, menacing sound. Oh, Mallory, you always were a feisty one, but you forget who you're dealing with. I have more power than you can possibly imagine, and I'm not afraid to use it. I'm not afraid of you, I spit out, my hand clenching around the phone. I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done, Everett. One way or another, you'll get what's coming to you. We'll see about that, he says, his voice turning icy. You have no idea what I'm capable of, Mallory, but you'll find out soon enough. With that, he hangs up, leaving me shaking with rage and fear. I down the rest of my wine in one gulp, trying to calm my racing heart. I know I'm in for the fight of my life, but I refuse to back down. Everett may think he has the upper hand, but he underestimates the power of a woman scorned. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family and make him pay for his betrayal, even if it means going to war with the man I once loved. The next few weeks are a blur of meetings, phone calls, and endless paperwork. I throw myself into my work, determined to build a new life for myself and secure my parents' future. My colleagues notice the change in me, the steely resolve that now underlies my every action. Mallory, are you sure you're okay? My friend and coworker, Sarah, asks me over lunch one day. You've been working nonstop lately. I give her a tight smile. I'm fine, Sarah. Just dealing with some personal issues, but I appreciate your concern. She nods, her eyes filled with understanding. If you ever need to talk, I'm here for you. You don't have to go through this alone. Her words touch me, and I feel a wave of gratitude wash over me. Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot. As I leave the office that evening, my phone buzzes with a text message. It's from Everett, asking to meet at a nearby cafe. I hesitate for a moment, weighing the risks, but ultimately decide to go. Better to face him on my own terms than wait for him to ambush me. When I arrive at the cafe, Everett is already there, sitting at a corner table with a smug smile on his face. I take a deep breath and approach him, my head held high. Mallory, so good of you to join me, he says, gesturing for me to sit down. I remain standing, my arms crossed. What do you want, Everett? I thought I made it clear that I don't want anything to do with you. His smile fades, replaced by a cold, calculating look. You may think you've won, Mallory, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. I have connections, resources that you can't even begin to imagine. I lean forward, my voice low and dangerous. And I have the truth on my side, Everett. I know about your financial misdeeds, your lies and manipulations, and I'm not afraid to use that knowledge against you. He scoffs. You think a few pieces of paper can stop me? I'll bury you in legal fees, drag this out for years until you have nothing left, and then when you're at your lowest, I'll take everything from you. Your parents' house, your job, your reputation. I'll make sure you have nothing left to fight for. I feel a chill run down my spine at his words, but I refuse to let him see my fear. You're wrong, Everett. I have plenty to fight for. My family, my self-respect, my freedom from your twisted games, and I won't stop until I've made sure you can never hurt anyone again. With that, I turn and walk away, my heart pounding in my chest. I can feel Everett's eyes boring into my back, but don't look back. I know I've just declared war, but I'm ready for battle. The next few days are a flurry of activity as I work with my lawyer to gather evidence against Everett. We pore over financial records, track down witnesses, and build a case that even he can't ignore. But Everett isn't one to back down easily. He sends threatening messages, tries to intimidate me at every turn. I refuse to let him get to me, but the constant stress takes its toll. One evening, as I'm working late at the office, I receive a call from my mother. Her voice is shaky and I can tell she's been crying. Mallory, it's your father. He's in the hospital. He had a heart attack. I feel my world tilt on its axis, my breath catching in my throat. I'm on my way, Mom. I'll be there as soon as I can. As I race to the hospital, my mind is a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at Everett for causing this stress, fear for my father's health, and a grim determination to see this fight through to the end. I won't let Everett win. Not now, not ever. The hospital room is quiet, save for the steady beep of the heart monitor. I sit by my father's bedside, holding his hand as he sleeps. The doctors say he's stable, but the stress of the past few weeks has taken a toll on his health. I feel a wave of guilt wash over me. I should have been there for him, should have protected him from Everett's machinations. But I was too caught up in my own battles to see the toll it was taking on my family. As I sit there, lost in thought, I hear a knock at the door. I look up to see my lawyer, a grim expression on her face. Mallory, we need to talk, she says, her voice low and urgent. I follow her out into the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. What is it? What's happened? She takes a deep breath. Everett is trying to file a countersuit. He's claiming that you're the one who mismanaged the finances, that you're the reason for the loss of your home. I feel my blood run cold. That's absurd. He's the one who gambled away our future, not me. She nods. I know, Mallory, but he's got a team of lawyers behind him, and they're going to do everything they can to make this stick. We need to be prepared for a fight. I clench my fists, anger coursing through my veins. I'm ready. I won't let him get away with this. We spend the next few hours going over our strategy, gathering evidence to refute Everett's claims. By the time we're finished, I'm exhausted but determined. I head back to my father's room, only to find Everett standing by his bedside. He looks up as I enter, a smirk on his face. Mallory, what a surprise. I was just checking in on dear old Dad. Such a shame about his heart attack. I feel my temper. Get out, Everett. You have no right to be here. He chuckles, a low, menacing sound. Oh, but I have every right. After all, I'm still legally your husband, and as your husband, I have a say in your family's affairs. I take a step forward, my voice shaking with rage. Not for long, you don't. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure you never come near my family again. His eyes narrow. You think it's going to be that easy? I'll drag this out for years, Mallory. I'll bleed you dry, and then I'll take everything you have left, including this hospital, if I have to. I feel a chill run down my spine at his words. What are you talking about? He smiles, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. I have connections, Mallory, connections that go far beyond what you can imagine, and if I have to use them to get what I want, I will. I shake my head, disbelief and anger warring within me. You're insane, Everett. You're not going to get away with this. He leans in close, his breath hot against my ear. Watch me. With that, he turns and walks out of the room, leaving me shaking with fury and fear. I turn to my father, still sleeping peacefully, and I make a silent vow. I will protect my family, no matter what it takes. I will fight Everett with every ounce of strength I have, and I will make sure he pays for what he's done, even if it means risking everything I have left. I take a deep breath, steeling myself for the battle ahead. It won't be easy, but I know I have the truth on my side. And with my lawyer by my side, I know I can win. Everett may think he has the upper hand, but he's about to learn just how far a daughter's love can go. I won't rest until my family is safe, and Everett is nothing more than a bad memory. The game is on, and I'm playing to win. The courtroom is packed as I take my seat next to my lawyer. The air is thick with tension, and I can feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Everett sits across the aisle, his face a mask of smug confidence. The judge enters, and the room falls silent. The proceedings begin, and I listen as my lawyer presents our case, laying out the evidence of Everett's financial misdeeds and manipulation. But Everett's lawyer is good. He twists the facts, painting me as a vindictive wife out for revenge. I feel my stomach churn as he spins his web of lies, making me out to be the villain. And then it's Everett's turn to take the stand. He plays the role of the innocent victim, his voice dripping with false sincerity as he recounts the story of our marriage. I loved Mallory with all my heart, he says, his eyes welling up with tears. But she changed. She became cold, distant. She stopped supporting me, stopped being the wife I needed her to be. I feel my blood boil at his words. How dare he paint himself as the victim after everything he's done? But my lawyer is ready. She cross-examines him, picking apart his story piece by piece. She presents the evidence of his gambling, his reckless investments, his lies, and deceit. And then she plays her trump card. A recording of a phone call between Everett and his broker discussing the illegal insider trading that led to the loss of our home. The courtroom erupts in gasps and murmurs. Everett's face turns white, and I see a flicker of fear in his eyes. The judge calls for order, and the room falls silent once again. And then, in a moment that will stay with me forever, the judge delivers his verdict. In light of the evidence presented, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Mallory Chambers, the divorce is granted, and the marital assets will be divided in accordance with the prenuptial agreement. I feel a rush of relief wash over me, followed by a sense of grim satisfaction. I've won. I've beaten Everett at his own game. But my victory is short-lived. As we leave the courthouse, Everett corners me in the hallway, his face twisted with rage. You think you've won? He hisses, his voice low and menacing. You have no idea what I'm capable of, Mallory. I'll make you pay for this. I'll make sure you never know a moment's peace again. I feel a chill run down my spine at his words, but I refuse to let him see my fear. You've lost, Everett. It's over. Just accept it and move on. He laughs, a harsh, bitter sound. Oh, it's far from over, Mallory. You may have won this battle, but the war is just beginning. With that, he turns and storms away, leaving me shaken and unsettled. I know I should feel triumphant, but all I feel is a sense of dread. I head back to my parents' house, where my mother is waiting for me with open arms. She hugs me tight, and I feel the tears I've been holding back finally spill over. It's okay, Mallory, she whispers, stroking my hair. You did it. You stood up for yourself, for all of us. I'm so proud of you. I nod, burying my face in her shoulder. I know, Mom, but I'm scared. Everett's not going to let this go. He's going to come after us again, I know it. She pulls back, looking me in the eye. And we'll be ready for him. We're a family, Mallory. We stick together no matter what. I take a deep breath, drawing strength from her words. She's right. We're a family, and we'll face whatever comes next together. But even as I try to push away the fear, I can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning. Everett may be down, but he's far from out, and I know he won't rest until he's had his revenge. A few weeks after the trial, I receive a message from Everett. It's short and cryptic, asking me to meet him at an address I don't recognize. My first instinct is to ignore it, but something tells me I need to see this through. I drive to the address, a luxurious apartment building in the heart of the city. The doorman lets me in, and I take the elevator up to the penthouse floor. When I knock on the door, Everett answers, a smile on his face. "Mallory, so glad you could make it," he says, ushering me inside. "I have something I want to show you." I follow him into the living room, where a stack of papers sits on the coffee table. He picks them up, handing them to me with a flourish. "I think you'll find these quite interesting," he says, his voice dripping with self-satisfaction. I look down at the papers, my heart sinking as I realize what they are. They're the deed to my parents' house, signed over to Everett. "What is this?" I ask, my voice shaking with anger. "What have you done?" He laughs, a cruel, mocking sound. "Oh, Mallory, did you really think I'd let you win that easily? I told you I have connections, and those connections were more than happy to help me convince your parents to sign over their house." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. "You bastard, how could you do this? How could you manipulate my parents like that?" He shrugs, a smirk on his face. "It was easy. They're old, vulnerable, they trusted me, and now their house belongs to me." I shake my head, disbelief and rage warring within me. "You won't get away with this, Everett. I'll fight you. I'll find a way to undo this." He steps closer, his face inches from mine. "You can try, Mallory, but you'll fail, just like you always do. You're weak, pathetic. You never had what it takes to play in the big leagues." I feel something snap inside me. Before I know what I'm doing, I'm swinging my fist, connecting with his jaw with a satisfying crack. He stumbles back, his eyes wide with shock, and then he's coming at me, his face twisted with rage. We grapple, trading blows and insults. I pour all my anger, all my pain into every punch, every kick. But Everett is stronger, and soon he has me pinned to the ground, his hands around my throat. "You stupid bitch," he snarls, his face red with exertion. "You think you can beat me? I own you, Mallory. I own your parents, your life, everything." I struggle against his grip, black spots dancing in my vision, and then, just as I think I'm about to pass out, I hear a voice. "Get off her, Everett. It's over." Everett looks up, his grip loosening, and there, standing in the doorway, is his brother Nathan. "Nathan?" Everett says, his voice confused. "What are you doing here?" Nathan steps into the room, his face grim. "I'm here to stop you, Everett. I know what you've done, how you've manipulated Mallory and her parents, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." Everett stands up, his face twisting into a sneer. "You don't know what you're talking about, Nathan. This is none of your business." But Nathan isn't backing down. "It is my business, Everett, because you've used my name, my reputation to get what you want, and I won't stand for it anymore." He turns to me, holding out a hand to help me up. "I'm sorry, Mallory. I should have seen what he was doing sooner, but I'm here now, and I'm going to make this right." I take his hand, pulling myself to my feet, and as I stand there, bruised and battered but still standing, I feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I'm not alone in this fight after all. Nathan helps me to my feet, and together we face Everett. He's seething with rage, his fists clenched at his sides. "You're making a big mistake, Nathan," he growls. "You don't want to cross me," but Nathan stands firm. "No, Everett, you're the one who's made the mistake. You've lied, cheated, and stolen your way through life, and now it's time to face the consequences." He turns to me, his eyes soft. "Mallory, I know a lawyer who can help us. She's the best in the business, and she'll make sure that your parents' house is returned to them." I nod, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Nathan. I don't know how to repay you." He shakes his head. "You don't owe me anything, Mallory. I'm just doing what's right." We leave Everett standing there, his face twisted with anger and disbelief. And as we walk out of the apartment, I feel a sense of hope for the first time in months. The next few weeks are a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork. Nathan's lawyer is as good as he said, and she works tirelessly to build our case against Everett. And then, finally, the day arrives. We stand in the courtroom, facing the judge as she delivers her verdict. In light of the evidence presented, I find in favor of the plaintiffs, Mallory and Nathan Chambers. The deed to the property in question is hereby declared null and void, and ownership will revert back to the original owners, Eleanor and Walter Chambers. I feel tears of relief spring to my eyes. We did it. We won. But Everett isn't ready to give up. As we leave the courthouse, he corners us, his face contorted with rage. "You think this is over?" he snarls. "I'll make you pay for this, Mallory, you and your whole family." Nathan steps in front of me, shielding me from Everett's wrath. "Back off, Everett. It's over. You've lost." But Everett isn't listening. He lunges at Nathan, his fists flying. I scream, trying to pull them apart, but it's no use. And then suddenly, the police are there. They grab Everett, pulling him away from Nathan and slamming him against the wall. "Everett Chambers, you're under arrest for assault and battery, as well as fraud and embezzlement," one of the officers says, cuffing his hands behind his back. I watch as they lead him away, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. He's finally getting what he deserves. The next few days are a whirlwind of activity. My parents move back into their house, and I help them settle in. Nathan and I grow closer, bonding over our shared experience and our determination to move forward. And then one evening, as we sit on the porch of my parents' house, watching the sunset, Nathan turns to me. "Mallory, I know this might seem sudden, but I have to say it. I've fallen in love with you. Seeing your strength, your courage through all of this, it's made me realize how amazing you are." I feel my heart skip a beat. "Nathan, I don't know what to say." He takes my hand, his eyes full of warmth. "You don't have to say anything, just know that I'm here for you, always." I lean in, pressing my lips to his. And as we sit there wrapped in each other's arms, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. We've been through hell, but we've come out the other side. And now, with my family safe and a new love by my side, I know that anything is possible. Everett may have tried to destroy us, but in the end, he only made us stronger. And that's a victory that no one can ever take away. "It's your time to step down, Della. Ron and I are moving in, and it's only fair you find a smaller place, now that you're alone," Marla said with a deceptive sweetness that didn't quite reach her eyes. The words hung in the air like a bitter aftertaste, shattering the illusion of our supposedly happy family gathering. I struggled to maintain my composure, my heart thumping as I glanced at the smug expressions of my stepdaughter and her new husband. Greg's untimely passing had left a void in our lives, and I'd naively hoped we could move forward as a united family. But Marla's announcement made it painfully clear that she had ulterior motives, her eyes glinting with a sense of entitlement that sent a chill down my spine. "I appreciate your concern, Marla," I replied, forcing a tight smile. "But this is still my home, and I have no intentions of leaving any time soon." Ron cleared his throat, leaning back in his chair with an air of smugness. "Well, the way I see it, you're just a temporary guest here. Greg left this place for his blood family, not some stepmom he picked up later in life." My jaw clenched at his disrespectful tone, but I refused to take the bait. Greg's will had been frustratingly ambiguous regarding the house, a loophole I knew Marla would exploit with her cunning manipulations. "That's enough, Ron," I said firmly, meeting Marla's gaze with unwavering resolve. "I think it's best if you two leave. We'll discuss this another time, preferably with cooler heads." Marla's lips curled into a sneer as she rose from her chair, her eyes narrowing with disdain. "Don't think for a second that I'll let this go, Della. This is my rightful inheritance, and I won't let you stand in my way." As they stormed out, the weight of Marla's words sank in, triggering a flood of memories from our past confrontations. She had always been a master manipulator, playing the victim while subtly undermining my relationship with Greg. And now, with him gone, she saw an opportunity to seize control, oblivious to the consequences of her actions. Steeling my resolve, I knew I couldn't let her win this battle. Marla had underestimated my determination, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to protect what was rightfully mine and teach her a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. With trembling hands, I poured myself a glass of wine, seeking solace in the familiar warmth of the burgundy liquid. Marla's audacious announcement had left me reeling, but I refused to let her see the depths of my distress. As I settled into the plush chair in my home office, the weight of the evening's events came crashing down. Marla had always been a thorn in my side, her entitled attitude a constant source of friction within our family. But this brazen attempt to seize control of the home Greg and I had built together was a new low, even for her. I took a sip of wine, grimacing at the bitter aftertaste that mirrored the emotions swirling within me. Anger, betrayal, and a burning desire for retribution all vied for dominance, fueling a determination I hadn't felt in years. Memories of past confrontations with Marla flooded my mind, each one a stark reminder of her manipulative nature. The way she had twisted situations to paint herself as the victim, turning Greg against me with her crocodile tears and false accusations. It was a pattern I had foolishly ignored for too long, blinded by my love for Greg and the hope that she would eventually mature. But now, with Greg gone, Marla saw an opportunity to strike, her true colors shining through like a venomous snake shedding its skin. And I, the naive stepmom, had unwittingly played right into her hands by underestimating her ruthlessness. "Not this time, Marla," I muttered, downing the rest of my wine with a newfound resolve. "You've made your move, but I'm far from checkmate." I knew Marla's financial irresponsibility was her Achilles heel, a weakness I could exploit to turn the tables on her machinations. Greg's will might have been ambiguous about the house, but I had the foresight to protect myself by ensuring any transfer of ownership would be contingent on meeting specific legal conditions. Conditions I knew Marla would struggle to uphold. A sly smile crept across my face as a plan began to take shape. Marla wanted the house? Fine. I would let her have it, but on my terms. And when the time was right, when her reckless spending and entitlement caught up with her, I would be there to watch her crumble under the weight of her own hubris. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. And I intended to make Marla's downfall a deliciously chilling affair, one that would teach her the harsh lessons of karma and consequence, lessons she should have learned long ago. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of determination as I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah, at our favorite local cafe. Her sharp features and no-nonsense demeanor had always put me at ease, a reassuring presence in the face of Marla's escalating antics. "So, let me get this straight," Sarah said, leaning back in her chair and studying me intently. "Marla not only demanded you vacate the house, but her husband had the audacity to imply you're just a temporary guest?" I nodded, my jaw clenching at the memory of Ron's disrespectful words. "That's the gist of it. Marla's made it abundantly clear that she intends to take over the property, regardless of my wishes or the legal implications." Sarah shook her head, a humorless chuckle escaping her lips. "Unbelievable. That girl has always been a piece of work, but this takes the cake." "You're telling me," I agreed, taking a sip of my coffee. "But I'm not about to let her get away with it. I want to explore every legal avenue available to prevent her from pulling this stunt." Sarah's eyes gleamed with a mixture of admiration and determination. "I'm glad to hear it, Della. Frankly, you've been too lenient with her in the past. It's time we fight fire with fire." As Sarah outlined my options, a plan began to take shape. While Greg's will had been frustratingly vague, there were still loopholes I could exploit to maintain control of the situation. If Marla wanted the house so badly, I would let her have it, but on my terms. "Here's what we'll do," I said, leaning forward with newfound conviction. "We'll draft a contract stating that ownership of the property will be transferred to Marla, but with specific conditions tied to the mortgage payments and upkeep costs." Sarah nodded, a sly grin spreading across her face. "I like where you're going with this. We'll include clauses that will be difficult for her to maintain, given her financial irresponsibility." "Exactly," I replied, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. "And when she inevitably fails to meet those conditions, the house will revert back to my control, along with any legal repercussions for her breach of contract." Sarah let out a low whistle, her admiration evident. "Della, you're a force to be reckoned with. I can't wait to see the look on Marla's face when she realizes she's walked straight into your trap." As we hammered out the details, a sense of vindication surged through me. Marla had always underestimated my resilience, mistaking my kindness for weakness. But now, she would learn the hard way that crossing me had severe consequences. "Let the games begin," I muttered. a wry smile playing on my lips as I imagined the look of shock and outrage on Marla's face when she realized the true extent of my machinations. The air was thick with tension as I watched the movers carry box after box into the house I had called home for so many years. Marla's smug expression was a stark contrast to the sadness etched onto her husband Ron's face, a hint of guilt flickering in his eyes as our gazes met. "I hope you're happy now," I said, unable to mask the bitterness in my tone. "You've finally gotten what you wanted." Marla scoffed, tossing her hair over her shoulder with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "Don't be so melodramatic, Della. This is just the natural order of things. You had your time, and now it's ours." I bit back a scathing retort, reminding myself to play along, for now. Sarah's careful legal maneuvering had ensured that Marla's so-called victory would be short-lived, and I intended to savor every moment of her impending downfall. As the last of my belongings were loaded into the moving van, I took one final glance around the house, committing every detail to memory. The walls that had witnessed countless family gatherings, the kitchen where I had prepared countless meals, the living room where Greg and I had spent countless evenings cuddled together on the couch. A pang of sadness tugged at my heart, but I quickly pushed it aside, steeling my resolve. This was no longer my home. It was merely a battlefield, and I was a seasoned warrior, ready to wage war against Marla's hubris. "Well, I suppose this is it," I said, turning to face my stepdaughter with a practiced calm. "The house is all yours, Marla. I hope you'll take good care of it." Marla's lips curved into a smug smirk, her eyes glinting with a sense of triumph that made my blood boil. "Don't worry, Della. I'll make sure to keep everything in tip-top shape. After all, this is my rightful inheritance." I forced a tight smile, resisting the urge to wipe that smug grin off her face. "We'll see about that," I muttered under my breath as I climbed into the waiting van. As we pulled away from the house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation bubbling within me. Unbeknownst to Marla, I had already set the wheels in motion for her inevitable downfall. A quick call to a trusted real estate agent had ensured that the property would be closely monitored, with any potential issues or foreclosure proceedings promptly reported to me. And with the carefully crafted legal conditions Sarah had woven into the transfer agreement, it was only a matter of time before Marla's financial irresponsibility caught up with her. A sly grin spread across my face as I settled into the plush seat of the van, already envisioning the look of shock and dismay on Marla's face when she realized the true extent of my machinations. "Checkmate, my dear," I murmured, watching as the house, and Marla's false sense of victory, disappeared in the rearview mirror. The modest apartment felt like a sanctuary, a haven from the chaos and betrayal that had plagued my life in recent weeks. As I unpacked the last of my belongings, a sense of calm washed over me. A calm that was tempered by a simmering determination to see my plan through to its inevitable conclusion. I had chosen this place strategically, a comfortable yet unassuming abode that would lull Marla into a false sense of complacency. She had always been one to judge based on appearances, and I knew she would revel in the idea of her once formidable stepmother being reduced to such modest living quarters. Little did she know that this was all part of my carefully orchestrated scheme. As I settled onto the plush couch, a wry smile tugged at my lips. Sarah had worked her legal magic, weaving a web of conditions and clauses into the transfer agreement that would prove to be Marla's undoing. It was only a matter of time before her reckless spending habits and financial irresponsibility caught up with her, setting the stage for the ultimate comeuppance. The sound of my phone ringing jolted me from my reverie, and I couldn't help but chuckle as I glanced at the caller ID. It was my trusted real estate agent, Cynthia, the woman tasked with keeping a close eye on the house and any potential issues that might arise. "Hello, Cynthia," I answered, my voice brimming with confidence. "I trust you have some good news for me?" "You know me too well, Della," Cynthia replied, her tone laced with a mixture of amusement and admiration. "It seems your stepdaughter has already started making waves. The bank has been in touch, reminding her about the upcoming loan renewal and the importance of maintaining a spotless credit history." I couldn't help but let out a satisfied chuckle. The loan renewal clause had been a stroke of genius on Sarah's part. a ticking time bomb that would detonate the moment Marla's financial house of cards came crumbling down. "Excellent," I said, leaning back into the couch's plush embrace. "Keep me updated on any developments, won't you, Cynthia? I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting." "You can count on it," Cynthia assured me. "I'll be sure to keep a close eye on the situation and report back any juicy details." As I ended the call, a sense of anticipation coursed through my veins. The trap had been set, and Marla was blissfully unaware of the snare tightening around her. All I had to do now was sit back and wait for her inevitable missteps to trigger the collapse of her ill-gotten gains. With a contented sigh, I reached for the remote control and turned on the television, eager to lose myself in mindless entertainment as the wheels of my revenge continued to turn in the background. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts, Marla," I murmured, a sly grin etching itself onto my features, "because when the dust settles, you'll be the one left picking up the pieces." The sound of shattering glass echoed through the once pristine hallways, punctuated by Marla's shrill screams and Ron's futile attempts to placate her. As I stepped through the front door, the scene that greeted me was one of utter chaos. A stark contrast to the orderly home I had maintained for so many years. "You idiot!" Marla shrieked, her face contorted with rage as she hurled a vase across the room, narrowly missing Ron's head. "How could you let this happen?" Ron cowered like a scolded puppy, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm sorry, babe," he mumbled, his voice trembling with fear. "I thought we had more time to get our finances in order." I cleared my throat, announcing my presence with a calm that belied the inner satisfaction coursing through my veins. "Is everything all right here?" Marla whirled around, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "You!" she spat, jabbing an accusatory finger in my direction. "You did this, didn't you? You set us up with those ridiculous loan conditions, knowing we'd never be able to keep up." A wry smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I took in the scene of Marla's unraveling. The once immaculate living room was a testament to her descent into chaos, with overturned furniture and shattered knickknacks strewn about like casualties on a battlefield. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Marla," I replied, feigning innocence. "This is simply the consequence of your own actions, or should I say, inactions?" Ron's eyes darted between us, a flicker of understanding dawning in their depths. "Babe, maybe she's right," he ventured cautiously. "We've been living way beyond our means, ignoring all the warning signs." Marla's jaw tightened, her nostrils flaring with indignation. "Don't you dare take her side," she hissed, rounding on her husband with a fury that made him flinch. "This is all part of her twisted game. She's been plotting against us from the start." I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony of her words. "You give me far too much credit, Marla," I said, taking a step closer. "The only game being played here is the one you started when you tried to take what wasn't rightfully yours." Realization began to dawn on Marla's face, her eyes widening as the pieces fell into place. The loan renewal clause, the meticulous monitoring of the property's value, the mounting debt that had spiraled out of control, it had all been a carefully orchestrated trap, and she had waltzed right into it. "You knew," she whispered, her voice laced with a mixture of awe and fury. "You knew I'd never be able to keep up with the payments, and you let me take the house anyway." I nodded, savoring the taste of her defeat. "Of course I did, dear. You see, I've learned a thing or two about the consequences of greed and entitlement over the years, lessons that you, unfortunately, have yet to grasp." As Marla sank to the floor, her carefully constructed facade of superiority crumbling around her, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. The scales of justice had finally been balanced, and the price of her hubris had been paid in full. The air was thick with tension as I surveyed the wreckage of what had once been a pristine living room. Marla sat on the floor, her shoulders slumped in defeat, while Ron hovered nearby, his expression a mixture of guilt and resignation. "Well, well, look at the mess you've made," I said, my voice laced with a mix of triumph and pity. "And to think, this could have all been avoided if you'd just learned to control your entitlement and greed." Marla's head snapped up, her eyes blazing with fury. "Don't you dare lecture me, Della," she spat, her words dripping with venom. "This was all part of your twisted little revenge scheme, wasn't it?" A wry smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I met her gaze unflinchingly. Revenge? Now why would I need to seek revenge against my own stepdaughter? Ron shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between us like a spectator at a particularly intense tennis match. Maybe we should all just take a deep breath and... Shut up, Ron, Marla snarled, cutting him off mid-sentence. This has nothing to do with you. I couldn't help but chuckle at her outburst. You see, Marla, that's where you're wrong. This has everything to do with the both of you and your complete disregard for consequences. Marla opened her mouth to retort, but I held up a hand, silencing her. No, let me finish. For years I've watched you manipulate and scheme, always taking what you wanted without a second thought for the fallout. You tried to turn Greg against me. You tried to take this house that wasn't rightfully yours, and all the while you've been living beyond your means, racking up debt like it was a badge of honor. Ron's brow furrowed as he processed my words, and I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. Wait, so those loan conditions, the monitoring of the property value, that was all you? I nodded, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. Indeed it was. I knew Marla's reckless spending habits would eventually catch up with her, so I simply facilitated the process. Marla's face contorted with rage as she struggled to her feet. Her fists clenched at her sides. You manipulative bitch, she seethed, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. How dare you try to take what's rightfully mine? I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of her words. Rightfully yours? Marla, you've never understood the concept of hard work and sacrifice. This house, this life that you so desperately coveted was built on the foundation of my blood, sweat, and tears. Greg may have left the ownership of this property ambiguous, but he knew in his heart who truly deserved it. As my words sank in, I could see the fight draining from Marla's body, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Ron, ever the passive accomplice, simply stood by silently, his expression a mixture of awe and resignation. You played me, Marla whispered, her voice barely audible. You let me think I had won, only to pull the rug out from under me. I nodded, a sense of vindication washing over me. Yes, I did. And you know why? Because sometimes the only way to teach a lesson is through harsh, uncompromising consequences. As I turned to leave, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for the broken woman before me. Marla had been her own worst enemy, her greed and entitlement blinding her to the reality of her actions. But as they say, karma is a bitch, and Marla had just learned that lesson the hard way. The soft ticking of the clock was the only sound that punctuated the silence as I sipped my tea, savoring the warmth and tranquility of my modest apartment. It had been several months since the fateful confrontation that had shattered Marla's delusions of grandeur, and in that time my life had settled into a comfortable routine. A knock at the door jolted me from my reverie, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension as I rose to answer it. Peering through the peephole, my breath caught in my throat. It was Marla, looking more disheveled and defeated than I had ever seen her. Steeling my resolve, I pulled open the door, meeting her gaze with a measured calm. Marla, I greeted, keeping my voice even, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? She shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet my eyes. I need your help, Della, she mumbled, the words seeming to stick in her throat. I raised an eyebrow, fighting back the urge to gloat at her admission of vulnerability. My help? After everything that's happened, you still have the audacity to ask for my assistance? Marla flinched as if I had struck her, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I know, she said, her voice laced with a weariness that tugged at my heartstrings. I was a complete monster to you, and I don't deserve your kindness. Sighing, I stepped back and gestured for her to enter. Well, you might as well come in and explain yourself. As she settled onto the couch, I couldn't help but notice the shadows under her eyes and the pallor of her skin, telltale signs of the stress and turmoil she had endured in recent months. I've hit rock bottom, Della, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. After losing the house and everything else, Ron left me. My credit score is in shambles, and I can barely make ends meet. A flicker of sympathy stirred within me, tempered by the lingering resentment of her past transgressions. And what do you expect me to do about it? I asked, my tone neutral. Marla's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she met my gaze. I need guidance, Della. I need you to teach me how to pick up the pieces and start over, the right way, this time." For a long moment I studied her, searching for any hint of deceit or manipulation. But all I saw was a broken woman, humbled by the harsh lessons of consequence and karma. Finally I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "All right, Marla, I'll help you, but on my terms. This won't be an easy road, and you'll have to follow my lead without question." Relief washed over her features, and she nodded eagerly. "Anything, Della. Just tell me what to do." As I outlined the steps she would need to take, budgeting, rebuilding her credit, finding steady employment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Not for the revenge I had exacted, but for the opportunity to guide Marla onto a path of redemption and self-growth. "It won't be easy," I cautioned her. "But if you truly commit to this journey, I promise you'll emerge stronger and wiser than ever before." Marla nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I'm ready, Della. I've learned my lesson, and I won't squander this second chance." As she left, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of hope for the future. Revenge might have been the catalyst that set us on this path, but in the end, it was about more than just retribution. It was about teaching the harsh lessons of life and giving someone the opportunity to rise from the ashes of their mistakes, reborn and renewed. And for that, I would always be grateful. I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, and every muscle in my body ached. As I tried to sit up, a wave of nausea swept over me, and I collapsed back onto the bed, shivering uncontrollably. "Elena, get up and clean this mess." Clayton's voice boomed from the living room. "I swear, you're just lazy. Can't even manage simple tasks while I'm at work." I dragged myself out of bed, my legs barely supporting my weight, and stumbled into the living room. Clayton was glaring at me, his eyes narrowed with disgust. The room was a mess, with dirty dishes piled in the sink and laundry scattered across the floor. "I'm sorry," I croaked, my throat raw and scratchy. "I've been feeling really sick." Before I could finish my sentence, Clayton cut me off. "That's no excuse. You're just lazy and unmotivated. I work all day to provide for us, and you can't even keep the house clean." His words stung, but I was too weak to argue. I tried to explain that I had a high fever and could barely stand, but he wasn't listening. He just kept berating me, his voice growing louder and more aggressive with each word. Suddenly, everything started spinning, and I felt myself falling. The last thing I heard was Clayton's voice, distant and distorted, before everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the couch, a damp cloth on my forehead. Clayton was nowhere to be seen. As I tried to piece together what had happened, the memories came flooding back. The sickness, the mess, the yelling, and then the darkness. It wasn't the first time Clayton had lashed out at me like that. Over the past year, his behavior had become increasingly erratic and abusive. The man I had fallen in love with, kind, caring, and supportive, had been slowly replaced by someone I barely recognized. I thought back to the early days of our relationship when we couldn't get enough of each other. We had met in college, and from the moment we locked eyes, it was like we were the only two people in the world. We were inseparable, spending every waking moment together, talking about our hopes and dreams for the future. After graduation, we got married, and everything seemed perfect. We had good jobs, a nice apartment, and a love that felt unbreakable. But then, slowly but surely, things started to change. Clayton became more distant, more critical, and more controlling. He would pick apart everything I did, finding fault in even the smallest tasks. Nothing was ever good enough for him. I tried to talk to him about it, but he always brushed it off or turned it around on me. "You're just too sensitive," he would say. "I'm only trying to help you improve." But it wasn't just the criticism. There was a darkness in him that I had never seen before, a rage that simmered just beneath the surface. He would lash out over the smallest things, and his words cut deeper than any knife. As I lay on the couch, my body aching and my heart heavy, I knew that something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, walking on eggshells, afraid of the next outburst. I had to find a way out, before it was too late. After my fainting spell, I couldn't stop thinking about how my life had taken such a dark turn. As I recovered in bed, memories of the early days with Clayton flooded my mind. The laughter, the joy, the unwavering support we had for each other. but those golden moments seemed like a lifetime ago, tarnished by the harsh reality of who he had become. I remembered the first time I saw a glimpse of his true nature. It was a few months after our wedding, and we were having a small get-together with friends. Clayton got into a heated argument with one of the guys over some trivial matter, and his face contorted into an expression of pure rage. His eyes were wild, his veins bulging, and for a moment I didn't even recognize him. After our friends left, I tried to talk to him about it, but he brushed it off as nothing. "Don't be so sensitive," he said, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. But the incidents kept happening, and the mask he wore began to slip more and more. The verbal jabs became more frequent, the criticisms more biting. He would find fault in everything I did, no matter how hard I tried. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, he came up behind me and started berating me for the way I was chopping the vegetables. "Can't you do anything right?" he spat, his words dripping with venom. I was so taken aback that I dropped the knife, narrowly missing my foot. Clayton just laughed, as if it were all some big joke. That's when I remembered the warning signs I had ignored from his ex-girlfriend, Emily. She had tried to tell me about his volatile temper and controlling behavior, but I brushed it off, convinced that he had changed. "He's not the same person he was with me," I had told her, my voice brimming with naive optimism. But Emily saw through his facade. "Believe me, that's just an act," she had cautioned. "The real Clayton will show his true colors eventually." How right she was. As I lay in bed replaying those memories, something inside me shifted. A fire ignited, a determination to take back control of my life. I couldn't continue living in fear, walking on eggshells, waiting for the next outburst. I knew that leaving him wouldn't be easy. Clayton had a way of making me feel small, worthless, as if I couldn't survive without him. But I had to try. For my own sanity, for my own safety, I had to break free from his toxic grip. From that moment on, I started documenting everything. Every insult, every criticism, every act of aggression, no matter how small. I kept a detailed journal, recording dates, times, and specific incidents, building a case against him. Whenever he berated me for not doing enough around the house, I would calmly remind him that I worked just as many hours as he did. When he accused me of being lazy or unmotivated, I would list out all the tasks I had accomplished that day, refusing to let him diminish my efforts. It was a daily battle, but I was determined to stand my ground. I started making plans, researching my options, and reaching out to friends and family for support. I knew that leaving him wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As I looked back on the person I had become, meek, submissive, a shell of my former self, I felt a surge of resolve. No more. I was done being a victim. It was time to take back control and reclaim the life that was rightfully mine. The days that followed were a constant battle, a tug-of-war between my newfound determination and Clayton's relentless belittling. Every morning I would wake up with a sense of dread, wondering what fresh hell awaited me. Despite working long shifts at the hospital, I was still expected to maintain a spotless home and have dinner ready the moment Clayton walked through the door. If anything was out of place or not up to his impossible standards, the verbal onslaught would begin. "What have you been doing all day?" he would snarl, kicking off his shoes and leaving them in the middle of the living room floor. "This place is a pigsty." I would calmly explain that I had just finished a 12-hour shift, but he would dismiss my explanations with a wave of his hand. "Excuses, excuses. That's all I ever hear from you." No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for him. The laundry wasn't folded to his liking, the dishes weren't cleaned properly, the floors weren't shining bright enough. He would nitpick and criticize every little thing, his voice dripping with contempt. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the hospital, I came home to find Clayton pacing around the living room, his face flushed with anger. "Where the hell have you been?" he spat as soon as I walked through the door. "I told you, I had to work late," I replied, too exhausted to argue. "There was an emergency, and we were short-staffed." "Oh, that's convenient," he sneered. "You're always working late, aren't you? Or are you just out gallivanting with other men?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Clayton, that's not fair. You know I would never." Before I could finish, he cut me off with a harsh slap across the face. The force of the blow knocked me backwards, and I stumbled, clutching my stinging cheek. "Don't you dare talk back to me," he roared, his eyes wild with rage. "I'm the one who brings home the money, and you ungrateful bitch better show some respect." I stood there, stunned, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't the first time he had hit me, but it never got any easier. Each blow chipped away at my self-worth, leaving me feeling smaller and more worthless than before. As Clayton stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, my body shaking with sobs. I knew I had to get out, but the thought of leaving filled me with terror. Where would I go? How would I support myself? But then I remembered the journal I had been keeping, the meticulous documentation of every insult, every slap, every degrading remark. I had evidence, proof of the hell I had been living in. With renewed determination, I picked myself up off the floor and made my way to the kitchen. I grabbed a bag of frozen peas from the freezer and held it against my throbbing cheek, wincing at the pain. As I sat there, icing my bruised face, a plan began to form in my mind. I couldn't leave, not yet. I needed more evidence, more ammunition to use against him. But this time, it wouldn't just be written words on a page. This time, I needed something more concrete, something undeniable. From that night on, I started secretly recording our interactions, capturing Clayton's explosive outbursts and vicious insults on my phone. Every time he raised his voice or his hand, I would hit record, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a dangerous game, but I was tired of living in fear. I was done being a victim. This time, I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, a family dinner to celebrate my younger brother's new job. But Clayton, as usual, found a way to turn it into a nightmare. From the moment we arrived at the restaurant, he was in a foul mood, snapping at the hostess and glaring at anyone who dared to make eye contact with him. I tried to diffuse the tension with small talk and forced smiles, but the dark cloud hanging over us was impossible to ignore. "So, Jake," Clayton said, turning his attention to my brother with a condescending smirk, "what kind of job did you manage to get? Flipping burgers, I assume?" Jake bristled at the insult, but he kept his cool. "Actually, I landed a position at a software company. Entry level, but it's a foot in the door." "Well, isn't that precious?" Clayton sneered, taking a swig of his beer. "Maybe one day you'll be able to afford a real job like mine." I could see the hurt flashing across Jake's face, but he remained composed. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity," he said evenly, "and I'm excited to see where it leads." Clayton let out a derisive snort, his lip curling with disdain. "If you're not careful, you'll end up like your sister, stuck in a dead-end job, slaving away for peanuts." That was the final straw. I had sat idly by, letting Clayton belittle and berate me for far too long, but I couldn't let him talk about my career, my passion, like that. "Excuse me?" I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm a nurse, Clayton. I save lives every single day. How dare you act like what I do is worthless?" For a moment, Clayton looked taken aback, as if he couldn't believe I had the audacity to talk back to him. Then his face contorted into a mask of rage, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Watch your tone with me, woman," he growled, leaning across the table. "Or do you need another lesson in respect?" The threat was clear, and a chill ran down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, but Jake beat me to it. "Don't talk to her like that," he said, his voice low and steady. "She's your wife, not your punching bag." Clayton whipped his head around, his gaze settling on my brother like a laser sight. "This is none of your business, kid. Stay out of it before you get hurt." But Jake refused to back down. "It is my business when you're treating my sister like garbage." The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Clayton's face was flushed with fury, his nostrils flaring as he struggled to control his temper. "Let's go," he snarled, tossing a handful of bills onto the table. "This dinner is over." As we left the restaurant, Jake pulled me aside, his eyes filled with concern. "Elena, what's going on?" he asked, his voice hushed. "That's not how a husband should treat his wife." I opened my mouth to brush it off, to make excuses for Clayton's behavior like I always did. But something in Jake's gaze stopped me. For the first time, I saw the situation through his eyes, the constant belittling, the veiled threats, the simmering violence just beneath the surface. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. "It's complicated," I said, my voice wavering, "but but I promise I'll explain everything. Just not here. Jake nodded, his jaw set with determination. Whenever you're ready, he said. I'm here for you, sis. No matter what. As we drove home in tense silence, Clayton seething in the front seat while Jake and I exchanged worried glances in the back, I knew that the time for secrets was over. If I was going to get out of this nightmare, I needed all the help I could get. And who better to have in my corner than the one person who had been looking out for me since the day I was born? The next few days were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. After the disastrous dinner, I knew I couldn't keep living in fear any longer. It was time to take action. Jake was true to his word, and he became my rock, my unwavering support system. When I finally worked up the courage to tell him the truth about the abuse I had been enduring, he didn't hesitate for a second. We're going to get you out of this, Elena, he said, his voice steady and determined, whatever it takes. Together, we hatched a plan. We needed undeniable evidence of Clayton's behavior, something that would hold up in court if it came to that. Audio recordings were a good start, but we needed visuals too. What if we set up cameras around the house? Jake suggested. That way we can capture everything. The insults, the threats, even any physical altercations. The idea made me nervous, but I knew it was our best shot. Clayton was becoming increasingly erratic, his outbursts more frequent and more violent. Who knew how far he might go if left unchecked? We decided to keep things simple. A few discreet cameras in the main living areas, nothing too obvious that might tip Clayton off. Jake handled the technical side, ordering the equipment and setting it up while I was at work. The first few days were nerve-wracking, waiting for something to happen. Every time I heard Clayton's heavy footsteps or raised voice, my heart would start pounding, and I would brace myself for the worst. And then, it happened. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when Clayton stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell is this?" he snarled, thrusting a crumpled piece of paper in my face. It was the phone bill, with a series of numbers highlighted in bold. "Who have you been calling?" he demanded, his voice low and menacing. "Is it another man? Are you cheating on me?" "Clayton, no, it's nothing like that," I protested, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those are just calls to my brother. You know that." But he wasn't listening. In a flash, his hand lashed out, striking me across the face with such force that I stumbled backwards, clutching my stinging cheek. "Don't lie to me, you ungrateful bitch," he roared, advancing on me like a predator cornering its prey. "I work my ass off to provide for you, and this is how you repay me?" I cowered in the corner, my heart racing as he towered over me, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment I was certain he was going to hit me again, or worse. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the rage seemed to drain out of him. He straightened up, smoothing his shirt and running a hand through his hair. "Clean yourself up," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You look pathetic." And with that, he turned on his heel and left the kitchen, leaving me trembling and fighting back tears. Later that night, when I was sure Clayton was asleep, I crept into the living room and checked the camera footage. There it was, captured in high definition. The false accusation, the physical assault, the cruel insults. I felt sick to my stomach watching it unfold, but at the same time a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. This was the evidence we needed, the smoking gun that would finally bring Clayton's reign of terror to an end. From that moment on, the cameras became my silent guardians, recording every twisted scene as it played out. And with each new incident, my resolve only grew stronger. Clayton had pushed me to my breaking point, but this time, I wasn't going to break. This time, I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. The day had finally come. After weeks of planning and gathering evidence, it was time to confront Clayton and put an end to his abuse once and for all. Jake and I had gone over the plan countless times, making sure every detail was perfect. We would sit Clayton down in the living room, away from potential weapons or breakable objects, and present him with the undeniable proof of his actions. The videos, the audio recordings, the documented instances of physical and emotional assault, we had it all. A damning case against him that not even his silver tongue could talk his way out of. As I waited for Clayton to come home from work, my heart was pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. What if he reacted violently? What if he tried to hurt me, or worse, hurt Jake? But I pushed those thoughts aside. We had come too far to back down now. This was my chance to take back control, to break free from the cycle of abuse that had consumed my life for far too long. When Clayton finally walked through the door, I steeled myself, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. "Clayton, we need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and annoyance, clearly not expecting the confrontation. "What's this about?" he asked, setting down his briefcase and loosening his tie. "Let's go into the living room," I replied, gesturing for him to follow. He rolled his eyes but complied, sinking onto the couch with a heavy sigh. "All right, let's get this over with," he grumbled. That's when Jake emerged from the hallway, a grim expression on his face. Clayton's eyes narrowed as he took in the unexpected presence of my brother. "What's he doing here?" he demanded, his voice taking on an edge of hostility. Before I could respond, Jake spoke up. "We know what you've been doing, Clayton," he said, his tone firm and unwavering. "The abuse, the violence, the control, it all stops now." Clayton's face twisted into a sneer, and he opened his mouth to unleash a torrent of insults and denials. But Jake held up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't bother lying," he said. "We have proof." With a flick of his wrist, Jake pulled up the video footage on his laptop, the screen flickering to life with a montage of Clayton's worst moments, the shouting, the threats, the physical assaults. Clayton's eyes widened as he watched himself lash out, his face contorting with rage with each sickening blow. For a moment, he was rendered speechless, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. But the shock quickly gave way to fury. "You've been spying on me?" he roared, leaping to his feet and sending the laptop crashing to the floor. "How dare you, in my own home?" Jake remained calm, unflinching in the face of Clayton's towering rage. "We did what we had to do to protect Elena," he said, his voice steady. "And now it's over. The police are on their way." As if on cue, the sound of sirens pierced the air, growing louder with each passing second. Clayton's eyes darted back and forth, his chest heaving as he realized the trap he had walked into. "You're making a big mistake," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You won't get away with this." But his threats rang hollow, his bravado crumbling as the flashing lights of the police cars flooded the room. As the officers swarmed in, weapons drawn, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally happening. The nightmare was coming to an end. Clayton put up a token resistance, spitting vile insults and accusations as the officers wrestled him into handcuffs. But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and for once, his silver tongue couldn't talk his way out of the consequences of his actions. As they led him away, his face twisted with impotent rage, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumphant satisfaction. For years he had controlled me, beaten me down, made me feel small and worthless. But not anymore. With Clayton's arrest, I had finally reclaimed my power, my freedom, my life. And as I watched his car disappear down the street, I knew that a new chapter was beginning, one where I would never again be a victim. The weeks following Clayton's arrest were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. But through it all, I clung to the knowledge that I had finally taken back control of my life. The evidence we had gathered, the videos, the audio recordings, the documented instances of abuse, painted a damning picture that even Clayton's high-priced lawyers couldn't refute. His attempts to discredit me and portray himself as the victim fell flat in the face of such overwhelming proof. As the court dates rolled around, I found myself steeling my nerves, determined to face my tormentor head-on. Jake was by my side every step of the way, a rock of unwavering support. When I took the stand, Clayton's eyes bored into me with a mixture of rage and desperation. His carefully cultivated mask of charm had slipped, revealing the true monster underneath. "You're ruining everything," he snarled as I delivered my testimony, recounting the years of emotional and physical abuse I had endured. "You were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing without me." But his words held no power over me anymore. I met his gaze with a calm, unwavering resolve, my voice steady and strong as I laid bare the truth of our twisted relationship. In the end, the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. Clayton was slapped with a restraining order, barring him from coming within 1,000 feet of me or my family. The judge also awarded me a substantial divorce settlement, ensuring that I would be able to start fresh without the financial burden of our shared assets weighing me down. As the verdict was read, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Justice had been served, and Clayton's reign of terror was finally over. But the true vindication came in the weeks and months that followed, as the ripple effects of his exposure began to take hold. Word of his arrest and conviction spread like wildfire through his professional circles, and the once charming salesman found himself shunned and ostracized. Clients and colleagues alike wanted nothing to do with a man who had been exposed as a violent abuser. Within weeks, he was unceremoniously fired from his high-paying job, his reputation in tatters. The expensive suits and fancy cars were gone, replaced by a humiliating reality of unemployment and social pariah status. As for me, I found myself embarking on a new chapter, one filled with possibility and promise. With the weight of Clayton's oppression finally lifted, I was free to pursue my dreams and ambitions without fear or limitation. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, channeling my newfound strength and resilience into caring for others. My colleagues remarked on the change in my demeanor, the newfound confidence and determination that radiated from me. And in my personal life, I became an advocate for victims of domestic abuse, sharing my story and offering support to those still trapped in the cycle of violence. I knew firsthand the shame and isolation that came with being a victim, and I was determined to be a beacon of hope for others struggling to find their own path to freedom. As I stood at my kitchen window one morning, sipping a steaming cup of coffee and watching the sunrise, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. The woman I was a year ago, cowering in fear and drowning in self-doubt, felt like a distant memory. In her place stood a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had stared down her demons and emerged victorious. The scars of my past would never fully heal, but they served as a reminder of the strength I had found within myself, a strength that no one, not even Clayton, could ever take away. And as the warm rays of the new day washed over me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and optimism for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew that I had the courage and resilience to face them head-on. My nightmare was over, and a new beginning awaited. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the city skyline. As I stood by the window, sipping my morning coffee, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me, a feeling that had been all too rare in the past. It had been 6 months since Clayton's arrest and the subsequent legal proceedings that had finally freed me from his toxic grip. 6 months of healing, of rediscovering who I was, without the constant weight of his abuse weighing me down. The journey hadn't been easy, of course. There were still moments when the memories would come flooding back, triggering waves of anxiety and self-doubt. But with the help of a supportive therapist and the unwavering love of my family, I was learning to cope, to process the trauma in a healthy way. And as the days turned into weeks and months, I found myself embracing a newfound sense of strength and resilience. The fragile, broken woman I had once been was slowly giving way to a survivor, a fighter who had stared down her demons and emerged victorious. At work, I channeled that energy into my nursing duties, approaching each patient with a level of empathy and compassion that could only come from someone who had walked through the flames of adversity. My colleagues remarked on the change in my demeanor, the newfound confidence that seemed to radiate from me. "You're like a different person," one of the nurses remarked over coffee one day. "It's like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders." I couldn't help but smile, thinking back to the dark days when that weight had felt suffocating, crushing me beneath its oppressive force. "You have no idea," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee and allowing the warmth to spread through me. Outside of work, I had become an advocate for victims of domestic abuse, sharing my story and offering support to those still trapped in the cycle of violence. I knew firsthand the shame and isolation that came with being a victim, and I was determined to be a beacon of hope for others struggling to find their own path to freedom. Speaking at support groups and shelters, I would recount my own experiences, pulling no punches in my descriptions of Clayton's cruelty and the emotional turmoil I had endured. But I would also emphasize the importance of staying strong, of never losing sight of one's self-worth in the face of such abuse. You are not defined by what was done to you, I would tell them, my voice ringing with conviction. You are a survivor, a warrior, and you have the strength within you to break free. And as I looked out over the faces of those brave souls, their eyes shining with a mixture of pain and hope, I knew that my words were making a difference. They saw in me a living embodiment of what was possible, a woman who had clawed her way out of the darkness and reclaimed her life. Of course, there were still moments when the shadows of my past would creep in, threatening to overwhelm me. But I had learned to confront those demons head-on, to draw strength from the battles I had already won. I would think back to that fateful day when Clayton was led away in handcuffs, his once intimidating presence reduced to a pitiful, impotent rage. I would remember the sense of triumph that had washed over me, the knowledge that I had finally taken back control of my life. And in those moments I would square my shoulders and lift my chin, letting the memories of my hard-won victory fill me with a renewed sense of determination. Because even though the scars of my past would never fully heal, they served as a reminder of the strength I had found within myself, a strength that no one, not even Clayton, could ever take away. As the sun continued its ascent, bathing the city in a warm golden hue, I took a deep breath and smiled. A new day was dawning, filled with endless possibilities and the promise of a brighter future. My nightmare was over, and a brand new chapter was just beginning. The phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand, shattering the tranquil silence of the night. Olivia groaned, squinting at the caller ID in the dim glow. "Dad, what's wrong?" The sound of her father's trembling voice instantly jolted her awake. "Olivia, there's something off about Nico. I can feel it in my bones." Nico. The name sent a chill down her spine. Aaron's fiancé, the supposed perfect match their family had embraced. "What do you mean, Dad? Did something happen?" No, Martin sighed, the weight of his concerns palpable. "It's just a gut feeling, but it's eating me up inside, kiddo." Olivia pinched the bridge of her nose, her father's words echoing in her mind. Mere instinct wasn't enough to condemn a man, but she knew better than to dismiss Martin's intuition outright. "I'll look into it, Dad. Don't worry." The call ended, but Olivia found no solace in the silence that followed. The nagging seed of doubt had been planted, its roots digging deeper with every passing second. She had to know the truth, for her family's sake. Aaron's elated voice replayed in her mind from their last conversation. "He's just perfect, Olivia. You'll see." But would she? Olivia tossed and turned, her thoughts a tangled web of uncertainty. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, Olivia made a decision. She booked a flight to Denver, her hometown, determined to observe Nico firsthand and unravel the mysteries surrounding her sister's fiancé. The familiar sights and sounds of Denver greeted her like an embrace from an old friend. Yet, beneath the comforting familiarity, a sense of unease lingered. Olivia steeled herself, knowing that the path ahead would be anything but easy. The family gathering that evening was a whirlwind of laughter and chatter, but Olivia's focus remained fixed on Nico. Every word, every gesture, was scrutinized, her analytical mind searching for the slightest inconsistency. Nico regaled the table with tales of his business exploits, his charisma captivating the room. "I've handled bigger deals than this back in my days in Chicago," he boasted, a hint of arrogance seeping through. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, a discordant note in the symphony of his storytelling. The more she observed, the more her suspicions grew, fueled by her father's unwavering instinct. As the night drew to a close, Olivia found herself in the backyard, her mind a whirlwind of doubts and questions. The cool night air did little to quell the burning determination within her. She would get to the bottom of this, no matter the cost. The following morning, I found myself meandering through the familiar streets of my hometown, Denver. Each step stirred up a whirlwind of memories, both cherished and bittersweet. But today, my purpose transcended mere nostalgia. I was on a mission to unravel the truth about Nico. As I approached the quaint family diner, a wave of comforting familiarity washed over me. The bell chimed cheerfully as I stepped inside, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and buttery pancakes filling the air. In the corner booth, a familiar figure waved me over, her face beaming with excitement. "Olivia!" Aaron exclaimed, enveloping me in a warm embrace. "I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait for you to meet Nico." I forced a smile, pushing aside the lingering doubts that gnawed at my conscience. I can't wait either, I lied, silently vowing to keep an open mind. As if on cue, a tall, well-groomed man appeared, his smile as polished as his appearance. You must be Olivia, he said, extending his hand. Aaron hasn't stopped talking about you. I studied his face, searching for any hint of deception, but found none. His easy charm and charisma were undeniable, making it easy to understand why Aaron had fallen so deeply for him. It's great to finally meet you, Nico, I replied, my voice betraying none of the suspicion that simmered beneath the surface. Over the course of our breakfast, Nico regaled us with tales of his business ventures, each story more impressive than the last. Erin hung on to every word, her eyes shining with adoration. He's just perfect, Olivia, she gushed, oblivious to the subtle inconsistencies that caught my attention. I've never been happier. I nodded, forcing another smile as Nico's gaze met mine. In that fleeting moment, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of something sinister lurking behind his charming facade. As we parted ways, Erin wrapped her arms around me, her joy palpable. I'm so glad you're here, she whispered. This means the world to me. I hugged her back, my heart heavy with the weight of the doubts that threatened to shatter her happiness. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, a feeling that only grew stronger with each passing moment. That night, as I lay awake in the familiar comfort of my childhood bedroom, my mind raced with unanswered questions. Was I simply being paranoid, or was there truly something darker lurking beneath Nico's polished exterior? One thing was certain, I wouldn't rest until I had uncovered the truth, no matter how painful it might be. For Erin's sake, and for the sake of our family, I had to know. The family dinner was a lively affair, with laughter and conversation flowing as freely as the wine. But beneath the jovial atmosphere, an undercurrent of tension simmered, fueled by my growing suspicions about Nico. As the meal progressed, I found myself scrutinizing his every move, searching for any hint of deception. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself. It all seemed too polished, too carefully crafted. So, Nico, my father began, his voice cutting through the chatter. Aaron tells us you have quite the impressive business background. Nico's smile didn't falter as he launched into another tale of his supposed exploits. Absolutely, Martin. I've handled bigger deals than this back in my days in Chicago. I couldn't help but notice the way his eyes darted ever so slightly, as if he were gauging our reactions. A flicker of unease rippled through me, but I remained silent, determined to observe and gather as much information as possible. As the evening wore on, the cracks in Nico's facade became more apparent. His stories didn't quite add up, and his responses to certain questions seemed rehearsed, almost too perfect. It was during a lull in the conversation that I seized my opportunity. So, Nico, I began, my voice calm but laced with intention. How did you and Aaron first meet? A brief pause, a millisecond too long, before he responded. It was at a charity event in the city, he said smoothly. Love at first sight, you could say. But something in his tone didn't sit right with me. There was a hollowness to his words, a disconnect that set off alarm bells in my mind. As the night drew to a close, I found myself alone in the backyard, desperately needing a moment of solitude to process everything I had observed. The cool night air did little to quell the storm of emotions raging within me. Lost in thought, I nearly jumped out of my skin when a familiar voice cut through the silence. Penny for your thoughts, sis. I turned to find Erin standing there, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. It's nothing, I lied, forcing a smile, just processing everything. Erin's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might press further, but then her features softened and she enveloped me in a warm embrace. I'm so glad you're here, she murmured. It means everything to me that you're a part of this. As I hugged her back, a wave of guilt washed over me. How could I shatter her happiness with my doubts and suspicions? Yet the nagging feeling that something wasn't right continued to gnaw at me, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. As we parted ways, I caught one last glimpse of Nico through the kitchen window. He was on the phone, his back turned, but there was something about the way he carried himself that sent a chill down my spine. In that moment, I knew I couldn't let this go. For better or worse, I had to uncover the truth, no matter where it led or how painful it might be. The nagging doubt had taken root, festering in the back of my mind like a malignant growth. I knew I couldn't shake this feeling until I uncovered the truth about Nico, no matter how unpleasant it might be. With a steely resolve, I turned to the one resource I knew could shed light on his past, the internet. Hours melted away as I scoured through public records, my fingers flying across the keyboard with feverish determination. At first, the results were innocuous. A few mentions of business deals, a charitable donation here and there. But then, buried beneath layers of seemingly benign information, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. Court records, detailing a string of fraudulent activities and legal battles, all linked to an alias that matched Nico's description. The details were damning: forgery, embezzlement, and a web of deceit that spanned years. My heart pounded in my chest as I printed out the documents, the weight of the evidence nearly suffocating me. This was it. The proof I had been searching for, the confirmation that my instincts had been right all along. But even as relief washed over me, a new wave of dread took its place. How could I confront Nico with this information? And more importantly, how could I break the news to Aaron, whose world would undoubtedly come crashing down? The decision was made for me when later that evening I overheard a hushed conversation between Nico and Aaron in the kitchen. "Make sure your old man doesn't poke around too much," Nico's voice hissed, laced with a venom I had never heard before. My blood ran cold, and I knew in that moment that I had to act, for Aaron's sake and for the safety of our entire family. Without hesitation, I dialed the one number I knew I could trust. Dean, my childhood friend who had become a respected detective in the local police force. "Dean, it's Olivia," I whispered urgently into the phone. "I need your help. I've uncovered something about Nico, and it's not good." There was a pause on the other end, and then Dean's voice, steady and reassuring. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, I laid out the damning evidence I had uncovered, my words tumbling out in a torrent of fear and determination. Dean listened intently, his silence punctuated only by the occasional question or murmur of concern. "We've seen his type before," Dean finally said, his voice grave. "Let's tread carefully, but prepare for the worst." As I hung up the phone, a sense of relief washed over me. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. With Dean by my side, I knew we stood a chance of exposing Nico's true nature before it was too late. But even as I steeled myself for the battle ahead, a part of me couldn't help but mourn for the innocence that was about to be shattered. Aaron's world was about to be turned upside down, and there was nothing I could do to soften the blow. All I could do was hope that, in the end, the truth would set us all free, no matter how painful it might be. With Dean on board, I felt a renewed sense of determination coursing through my veins. No longer was I fighting this battle alone. I had an ally, someone I could trust implicitly. We met the next day at a nondescript diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where conversations could happen unnoticed. Dean slid into the booth across from me, his expression grim. "I've been digging into Nico's past," he said, sliding a folder across the table, "and let's just say your instincts were spot on." I flipped open the file, my eyes widening as I took in the damning evidence Dean had uncovered. Financial records, witness statements, even surveillance photos. It was all there, painting a picture of a man who had made a career out of deception and fraud. "How did you get all this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dean's lips curled into a tight smile. "Let's just say I have my ways." As I pored over the documents, a sickening realization washed over me. Nico was no ordinary con man. He was a master manipulator, a predator who had left a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams in his wake. "We have to stop him," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and determination, "before he does the same thing to Aaron and our family." Dean nodded solemnly. "Don't worry, we'll put an end to this, but we have to be smart about it. Guys like Nico are slippery. We can't give him any chance to slip away." Over the next few days, Dean and I formulated a plan, meticulously laying the groundwork for Nico's downfall. We knew we had to tread carefully, gathering as much evidence as possible before making our move. As the pre-wedding festivities kicked into high gear, I found myself playing the role of the supportive sister, all the while keeping a watchful eye on Nico's every move. It was a delicate balancing act, one that tested the limits of my resolve. But through it all, one thought kept me going. the knowledge that I was doing this for Erin, to protect her from the devastating consequences of Nico's deceit. Finally, the night of the rehearsal dinner arrived, and I knew our moment had come. As the guests mingled and laughter filled the air, I caught Dean's eye from across the room. With a slight nod, he slipped away, setting our plan in motion. Minutes later, the sound of commotion from the hallway cut through the revelry. Nico's face drained of color as Dean strode into the room, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Nico Delgado," Dean's voice boomed, his expression one of grim satisfaction. "You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and a slew of other charges. The charade ends today." Time seemed to slow as Nico's true nature was laid bare for all to see. Erin's anguished cries pierced the stunned silence, her world crumbling around her. As the officers led Nico away in handcuffs, I could see the hatred burning in his eyes, a hatred directed squarely at me. But in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing, no matter the personal cost. Because in the end, the truth was all that mattered, and Nico's web of lies had finally been unraveled, once and for all. The days following Nico's arrest were a whirlwind of chaos and heartbreak. Erin, consumed by a grief so raw and visceral, retreated into a shell of silence, unable to process the betrayal that had shattered her world. As for me, I found myself caught between a sense of relief and a nagging guilt. While I knew I had done the right thing in exposing Nico's true nature, the sight of my sister's anguish was almost too much to bear. It was during one of the pre-wedding parties, a lavish affair that now felt like a hollow mockery, that I found myself face to face with the man who had orchestrated this deceit. Nico stood alone, his once charming demeanor replaced by a cold, calculating stare. As our eyes met, a shiver ran down my spine, but I refused to back down. "Olivia," he said, his voice dripping with disdain, "I should have known you'd be the one to stick your nose where it didn't belong." I steeled myself, refusing to let his words rattle me. "Cut the act, Nico. It's over." A mirthless chuckle escaped his lips. "Oh, it's far from over. You have no idea what you've just unleashed." Before I could respond, he leaned in closer, his breath hot against my ear. "I'll make sure you regret this, one way or another." A wave of revulsion washed over me, and I recoiled, my fists clenched at my sides. "Is that a threat?" Nico's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a contemptuous sneer. "Call it whatever you want, but mark my words, you haven't seen the last of me." With that, he turned on his heel and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me shaken and seething with anger. As the party raged on around me, I found myself seeking solace in the quiet of the gardens, desperate for a moment of respite from the chaos that had consumed my life. It was there, amidst the fragrant blooms, that Dean found me, his expression etched with concern. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low and reassuring. I let out a long sigh, the weight of Nico's threat still lingering. "I'm fine, just rattled, I guess." Dean's brow furrowed. "What did he say to you?" Reluctantly, I recounted the encounter, my words tinged with a hint of fear that I couldn't quite shake. To my surprise, Dean's expression hardened, his jaw clenched with determination. "That son of a bitch," he growled. "Don't worry, Olivia. He's not getting away with this." I nodded, grateful for Dean's unwavering support. "I know, but what if he's right? What if this is just the beginning?" Dean placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Then we'll be ready. We've got the law on our side, and we're not backing down. Not now, not ever." As I gazed into his resolute eyes, I felt a surge of strength wash over me. Nico's threats were hollow. He was a cornered animal, lashing out in desperation, and I would be damned if I let him win. From that moment on, a newfound determination took hold. I may have exposed Nico's deceit, but the battle was far from over. He had threatened my family, my very way of life, and I would stop at nothing to ensure he paid for his crimes. As the party drew to a close, I caught a glimpse of Erin, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted. In that moment, I vowed to myself that I would do whatever it took to protect her, to shield her from the fallout of Nico's actions. Because in the end, family was all that mattered, and I would fight like hell to keep ours intact, no matter the cost. The day of the wedding rehearsal dawned like a harbinger of reckoning. As I stepped into the ornate church, the weight of the past few weeks bore down upon me, threatening to crush me beneath its weight. Erin sat in the front pew, her eyes hollow and lifeless, a mere shadow of the vibrant woman I had known. My heart ached for her, for the dreams she had so foolishly pinned on a man who had proven himself to be nothing more than a master of deception. As the rehearsal began, I found myself scanning the crowd, searching for any sign of Nico. Part of me hoped he would have the audacity to show his face, to give me the chance to confront him one last time. But he was nowhere to be seen, and for a fleeting moment I wondered if perhaps he had simply cut his losses and fled. That notion was swiftly dispelled when Dean caught my eye from the back of the church, his expression grave. With a barely perceptible nod, he slipped out of the side door, his movements purposeful and determined. My heart raced as the minutes ticked by, the rehearsal proceeding in a haze of artificial smiles and forced pleasantries. Just when I thought I could bear the tension no longer, the sound of commotion from the vestibule shattered the fragile illusion. All eyes turned as Dean strode back into the church, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. In their grasp, a bedraggled and defiant Nico struggled against his restraints, his once polished veneer now cracked and peeling away. "Nico Delgado," Dean's voice boomed, echoing through the sanctum like a thunderclap. "You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and a slew of other charges. The charade ends today." Time seemed to slow as the words hung in the air, their weight pressing down upon us all. Erin let out a guttural wail, her anguish reverberating through the church like a physical force. Nico, for his part, fixed me with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. "You," he spat, his words laced with venom. "You did this. You'll pay for this, you bitch!" Before I could react, Dean was upon him, wrenching him back with a savage force. "That's enough out of you," he growled, his grip unwavering. As the officers led Nico away, his threats and curses echoing through the halls, a deafening silence descended upon the church. All eyes turned to me, a kaleidoscope of emotions playing across their faces: shock, relief, and in the case of my father, grudging respect. It was Erin's gaze that cut deepest, though. Her eyes, once so full of love and joy, now burned with a betrayal so profound it threatened to consume us both. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with barely contained anguish. "He was my everything." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. What could I say? That I had done what was necessary to protect her, to shield her from a life of lies and heartbreak? In the end, I said nothing. There were no words that could salve the wound I had inflicted, no platitudes that could undo the damage wrought by Nico's deceit. As the church emptied, the echoes of Erin's sobs lingering in the air, I found myself alone with my thoughts, a maelstrom of conflicting emotions swirling within me. I had won, that much was certain. But at what cost? The collateral damage was immeasurable, and I couldn't help but wonder if the price had been too high. Yet, as I gazed up at the towering stained-glass windows, their kaleidoscopic hues casting a warm glow across my face, I knew in my heart that I had done the right thing. Nico's web of lies had been unraveled, his reign of terror brought to an end, and as painful as the consequences might be, at least now we could begin to heal. The aftermath of Nico's exposure was a whirlwind of emotions, each day bringing a new set of challenges and revelations. As the true extent of his deceit came to light, our family found itself navigating the treacherous waters of betrayal and heartbreak. Erin, once the embodiment of joy and laughter, retreated into a shell of grief and anguish. Her world had been shattered, her dreams reduced to ashes by the man she had loved and trusted. I ached to comfort her, to soothe the wounds inflicted by Nico's lies, but words seemed inadequate in the face of such profound pain. Dad, ever the stoic pillar of strength, struggled to mask his own turmoil. The guilt of having doubted his instincts weighed heavily upon him, a burden he carried in silence. It was only in the quiet moments when his guard was down that I glimpsed the depth of his remorse. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that I had done the right thing, no matter how arduous the path had been. Nico's reign of deception had come to an end, and while the cost had been steep, at least now we could begin to rebuild our lives on a foundation of truth. It was during one of those rare, quiet evenings that Dad sought me out, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "Olivia," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you an apology." I shook my head, waving off his words. "Dad, you don't have to." He held up a hand, silencing me with a gentle yet firm gesture. "No, I do. I was blind, kiddo. blinded by my own desire to see Aaron happy, to the point where I ignored the warning signs right in front of me. A heavy silence hung between us, the weight of his words settling like a physical presence. "You saved us, my girl," he continued, reaching out to take my hand in his calloused grip. "If it weren't for your vigilance, your unwavering determination to uncover the truth, who knows what depths Nico's deceit might have reached." Tears welled in my eyes as I squeezed his hand, a lifetime of unspoken emotions passing between us in that moment. "I did what any sister would do, Dad," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Aaron's happiness means everything to me." Dad's eyes shone with a mixture of pride and relief. "I know, kiddo, and that's what makes you so special." In the weeks that followed, the process of healing began in earnest. Erin, slowly but surely, emerged from the depths of her despair, her spirit battered but unbroken. With the unwavering support of our family, she found the strength to pick up the pieces and start anew. And as for Nico, his day of reckoning finally came. The weight of the evidence, coupled with the tenacity of Dean and the legal system, ensured that he would face the consequences of his actions. Though the scars of his betrayal would linger, at least now we could find solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. As I stood on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in a kaleidoscope of colors, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us to this point. It had been a harrowing path, fraught with pain and heartbreak, but in the end, we had emerged stronger, our bonds forged anew in the crucible of adversity. And as the first stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, I made a silent vow to never again let doubt or deception darken our doorstep, to protect the sanctity of our family with every fiber of my being. For in the end, that was the true victory. The knowledge that no matter what life threw our way, we would face it together, united in our unwavering love and resilience. During a seemingly innocuous family dinner, the conversation flowed as usual, my husband Todd discussing his work at the insurance firm, our teenage son Aaron rambling about his latest video game obsession. That's when I noticed Todd's demeanor shift, his eyes darting furtively as he excused himself from the table, whispering into his phone in the hallway. "Sarah, I promise, we'll start fresh soon. Just be patient a little longer." My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of his words sank in. "Sarah?" A chill ran down my spine as Todd returned, his expression carefully composed, as if nothing had transpired. Doubts resurfaced. The late nights at the office, the unexplained charges on our credit cards. I had suppressed them, convincing myself that his dedication to providing for our family was paramount. That night, as Todd slept soundly beside me, my mind raced, dissecting every interaction, every half-truth that had once seemed innocuous. How could the man I had sacrificed so much for, the one for whom I had put my own career aspirations on hold, betray me in this way? The following morning, I feigned normalcy, my accountant's mind already formulating a plan. If Todd thought he could deceive me, the woman who had meticulously managed our finances for decades, he was sorely mistaken. I would unravel this web of lies, one thread at a time. Poring over our banking statements, I noticed suspicious patterns. Lavish purchases, withdrawals, and transfers that defied explanation. Each discrepancy fueled my determination, hardening my resolve to expose the truth, no matter how painful. As the days passed, my investigation intensified. I scoured credit card statements, cross-referenced receipts, and flagged every anomaly. The evidence mounted, and with it, my sense of betrayal deepened. One evening, while Todd was supposedly working late, I followed a lead to an upscale apartment complex. There, in the dimly lit parking lot, I caught a glimpse of him embracing a younger woman, their bodies intertwined in a passionate kiss. My heart shattered as the realization hit me. My husband, the man I had devoted my life to, had been living a lie. The evidence of Todd's betrayal lay scattered across my office desk. Bank statements, credit card receipts, all pointing to a hidden life he had so carefully concealed. As an accountant, I prided myself on my meticulous attention to detail, but even I had been blind to the glaring discrepancies in our finances. "What's all this?" Todd's voice startled me as he entered the room, his brow furrowed in confusion. I straightened my back, marshalling every ounce of courage. "Care to explain these charges at the Grand Lux Hotel, or the monthly payments to an apartment downtown?" Todd's face paled as he glanced at the incriminating paperwork. "Marlene, it's not what you think. Don't insult my intelligence," I spat, fury coursing through my veins. "I know about Sarah. I saw you with her." A heavy silence hung in the air as Todd struggled to formulate a response. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging in resignation. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." "It just happened?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been living a double life, betraying me and our family with your lies and infidelity." Todd's eyes pleaded with me, but I had no sympathy left to offer. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But we can work through this, I swear." I let out a bitter laugh. "Work through this? After you squandered our hard-earned savings on your mistress? Lavished her with gifts while I scrimped and saved to make ends meet?" Rage contorted his features as he lashed out. "You think it was easy, living with a woman so consumed by her work, always crunching numbers, never having time for me?" His words stung, but I refused to let him shift the blame. "That's no excuse for what you've done. I sacrificed my own ambitions to support your career, and this is how you repay me?" Todd's head dropped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm sorry, Marlene, I've made a mess of everything." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I said coldly, gathering the damning evidence. "Not anymore." As I brushed past him, our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw the depth of his regret. But it was too little, too late. The man I had loved, the one I had trusted implicitly, was nothing more than a stranger cloaked in deceit. I knew then that there was no turning back. The scales had fallen from my eyes, and I would stop at nothing to regain what was rightfully mine: my dignity, my independence, and my future. In the days following my confrontation with Todd, a heavy pall hung over our once happy home. The warmth and laughter that had once filled its walls were now replaced by a suffocating silence, punctuated only by the occasional heated exchange. "I want a divorce," I stated flatly one evening, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. Todd's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious, Marlene, after everything we've been through?" "You did this?" I shot back, gesturing to the emptiness that now surrounded us. "Your lies, your betrayal, they destroyed our marriage." He shook his head vehemently. "We can work it out. I'll do anything. Just don't throw away our family like this." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The damage had been done, and the trust that had once bound us together lay in tatters. I knew, deep down, that there was no salvaging what remained of our broken union. Steeling my nerves, I contacted a divorce lawyer, a formidable woman named Rachel, who promised to fight for my fair share. As we pored over the financial records, a clearer picture of Todd's deception emerged. Lavish gifts, exotic vacations, all funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated her like a queen while I struggled to make ends meet, I confided in Rachel, my voice thick with emotion. Her eyes narrowed with determination. "We'll make sure he pays for every penny, Marlene. This is just the beginning." True to her word, Rachel guided me through the labyrinth of legal proceedings, ensuring that every asset, every hidden account was laid bare. With each revelation, I felt a twisted sense of vindication, knowing that Todd's carefully constructed facade was crumbling around him. Yet, even as the evidence mounted, a part of me still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved. The charming, devoted husband who had promised to cherish me forever. How could someone I had trusted so implicitly have become such a stranger? In my darkest moments, I found solace in the company of my closest friend, Jenna. Over countless cups of coffee, she listened patiently as I poured out my pain, my anger, and my doubts. "You're doing the right thing, Marlene," she would reassure me, her warm embrace offering a brief respite from the storm that raged within. "He doesn't deserve your loyalty after what he's done." Her words, though harsh, rang true. Todd had shattered the sacred vows that had once bound us, and there was no turning back. As the divorce proceedings gained momentum, I could feel the weight of his betrayal slowly lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. I would emerge from this ordeal stronger, wiser, and above all, unbroken. The road ahead might be long and uncertain, but I knew that with each step, I was reclaiming the life that had once been so callously stolen from me. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of Todd's betrayal seemed to bear down on me more heavily with each passing moment. Despite the support of my dear friend Jenna, I found myself drowning in a sea of doubt and anger, struggling to make sense of the life I had once known. It was during one of our coffee dates that Jenna broached a subject I had been too afraid to confront. "Have you considered hiring a private investigator?" she asked gently, her eyes filled with concern. I recoiled at the suggestion, my mind immediately conjuring up images of seedy detectives and sordid affairs laid bare. "I'm not sure I want to know any more than I already do." Jenna reached across the table, her warm hand enveloping mine. "Marlene, you deserve the truth, all of it. Isn't it better to have the facts than to be haunted by uncertainty?" Her words struck a chord, and I knew she was right. As painful as it might be, I needed to uncover the full extent of Todd's betrayal to finally shed light on the secrets he had kept hidden for so long. With Jenna's help, I tracked down a reputable private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Samantha, who promised to handle my case with discretion and professionalism. "Just tell me what you need, and I'll get to the bottom of it," she assured me during our initial consultation. I steeled myself, listing off the details I had uncovered: the mysterious apartment, the unexplained charges, and the elusive woman named Sarah. Samantha nodded, her keen eyes taking in every detail. "Leave it to me," she said with a confident nod. True to her word, within a matter of days, Samantha had unearthed a trove of damning evidence. Surveillance photos captured Todd's clandestine meetings with a woman identified as Clarice, a younger, stunning brunette who appeared to be his mistress. "He's been lavishing her with gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, all paid for with your money," Samantha reported grimly, sliding a stack of incriminating receipts across the table. As I pored over the evidence, my hands trembled with a potent mix of rage and heartbreak. This Clarice was no mere fling. Todd had been leading an entire double life, one funded by the very savings I had worked so tirelessly to build. "That bastard," I spat, hot tears of anger stinging my eyes. "He's going to pay for every single lie." Samantha's expression hardened with determination. "We'll make sure of it. This is just the beginning." With the truth laid bare before me, I felt a newfound sense of resolve coursing through my veins. No longer would I be the naive, trusting wife, blindly following the path laid out for me. This time, I would be the one calling the shots, and Todd would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. Armed with the damning evidence gathered by Samantha, I felt a newfound determination coursing through my veins. It was time to confront Todd and his mistress head-on, to strip away the veil of lies that had shrouded our lives for far too long. With Jenna by my side for moral support, we made our way to the upscale apartment complex where Clarice resided. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and trepidation as we approached the sleek glass doors, the weight of what I was about to do bearing down on me. "Are you sure about this, Marlene?" Jenna asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. No more running, no more hiding. Jenna gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and together we stepped inside. The ride up to Clarice's floor was agonizingly slow, each passing second fueling the fire burning within me. When the elevator doors finally opened, I strode down the plush hallway with purpose, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to the inevitable confrontation. I rapped sharply on the door, my knuckles stinging from the force of my blows. Moments later, it swung open, revealing a startled Clarice, clad in a silk robe, her perfectly coiffed hair mussed from what was undoubtedly a passionate tryst with my husband. "Marlene?" she gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you doing here?" Before I could respond, Todd appeared behind her, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Marlene, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I spat, shoving past Clarice and into the lavish apartment. "I know everything, the lies, the affairs, the money you've been funneling to support your little mistress here." Clarice's mouth fell open in outrage. "How dare you barge in here and make accusations? Todd loves me and we're going to be together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Is that what he told you? That he'd leave his wife and family for a pretty little thing like you?" Todd stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Marlene, please, let's discuss this like adults." "Oh, we're well past discussion," I snarled, reaching into my purse and retrieving the stack of evidence Samantha had provided. "I have proof of every sordid detail. The secret apartment, the lavish gifts, all paid for with money that should have gone to supporting our family. As I brandished the damning photos and receipts, Todd's face drained of color. Clarice, too, appeared shaken, her confident facade crumbling as the truth laid bare. "You've been using me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Todd's gaze darted between us, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It's not like that, Clarice. I never meant to hurt either of you." But his words fell on deaf ears. The betrayal ran too deep, the wounds too raw to be soothed by empty platitudes. "Save your lies for someone who still believes them," I spat, turning on my heel and storming towards the door. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." As I swept out of the apartment, Jenna hurrying to keep pace beside me, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. The shackles of deceit had been broken, and for the first time in months I could breathe freely. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but I was ready to face it head-on. Todd's misdeeds had been laid bare, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. No more hiding, no more lies. The reckoning had begun. In the aftermath of my explosive confrontation with Todd and Clarice, a sense of grim determination settled over me. I had laid bare the truth of his deceit, and now it was time to make him pay. Not just for the lies, but for every penny he had squandered on his sordid affairs. With Rachel, my formidable divorce lawyer, by my side, we set about meticulously documenting every financial betrayal, every hidden transaction that had drained our accounts over the years. The evidence was damning, a paper trail of excess and greed that left no room for doubt. As we prepared to file the divorce papers, Rachel turned to me, her steely gaze unwavering. "We're not just going after a settlement here, Marlene. We're going to bury him." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I knew she was right. Todd's actions had gone far beyond the bounds of a simple infidelity. He had systematically looted our hard-earned savings, betraying the very foundation of trust upon which our marriage had been built. When the news of our impending divorce hit the headlines, the fallout was swift and merciless. Todd's once pristine reputation as a respected insurance agent lay in tatters, his clients fleeing in droves as the sordid details of his affairs came to light. How could we have trusted him with our policies when he couldn't even keep his own house in order? One former client lamented to the press. As Todd's professional life crumbled around him, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching him reap the consequences of his actions. No more hiding behind a facade of respectability. The world now knew him for the liar and cheat he truly was. But my revenge didn't stop there. With Rachel's guidance, I dug deeper into Todd's financial dealings, uncovering a tangled web of shady investments and ethical breaches that threatened to strip him of his insurance license altogether. "He's been playing fast and loose with client funds for years," Rachel revealed, her expression grim, "using their premiums to fund his lavish lifestyle and pay off his mistresses." The evidence was irrefutable, and before long, the governing board had no choice but to revoke Todd's license, effectively ending his career in disgrace. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, each court appearance became a public spectacle, with Todd's sordid misdeeds laid bare for all to see. I watched with a strange sense of detachment as he squirmed under the weight of his own lies, his once cocky demeanor replaced by a pathetic whimpering as he begged for leniency. But I was unmoved. He had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it, alone, disgraced, and utterly ruined. In the end, the settlement was a mere formality. I had already taken back what was most precious, my dignity, my independence, and the knowledge that I had emerged from this ordeal a stronger, more resilient woman. As I watched Todd slink away from the courthouse, his head bowed in shame, I felt a strange sense of pity for the broken man he had become. But that pity was quickly overshadowed by a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over, and I was free to start anew, unburdened by the weight of his betrayal. As the dust settled from the explosive divorce proceedings, I could scarcely recognize the man who had once been my husband. Todd's world had come crashing down around him, and the once cocky insurance agent was now a mere shadow of his former self. "This isn't over, Marlene," he snarled during one of our final court appearances, his eyes burning with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You haven't seen the last of me." But his threats rang hollow, a feeble attempt to cling to the illusion of power he had once wielded. The truth was laid bare. He was a disgraced shell of a man, his reputation in tatters, his finances in ruin. With each passing day, new revelations emerged, painting a picture of a man consumed by greed and deceit. It seemed that Clarice had been merely the tip of the iceberg, with evidence surfacing of multiple affairs spanning years, each mistress lavished with expensive gifts and exotic vacations funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated them like queens while I scraped by, pinching every penny, I confided to Jenna over coffee, my hands trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jenna's expression hardened, her usual warmth replaced by a steely resolve. He's going to pay for every single lie, Marlene. We'll make sure of it. True to her word, Jenna became my fiercest ally, standing by my side as we methodically dismantled every aspect of Todd's carefully constructed facade. With the help of Rachel and her team of investigators, we uncovered a tangled web of financial misdeeds that went far beyond simple infidelity. It seemed that Todd had been using client funds to bankroll his lavish lifestyle, siphoning off premiums and investment returns to fuel his insatiable appetite for excess. The evidence was damning, and before long, the governing bodies had no choice but to take action. Mr. Wilkins, in light of the overwhelming evidence of ethical breaches and financial misconduct, we have no choice but to revoke your insurance license, effective immediately, the stern-faced judge declared, her gavel punctuating the finality of her words. As Todd slumped in his seat, his face ashen, I felt a strange sense of vindication wash over me. This was the true cost of his betrayal. Not just the loss of his marriage and family, but the complete and utter annihilation of everything he had worked for. In the weeks that followed, word of Todd's downfall spread like wildfire, his once respectable name becoming a byword for duplicity and greed. Former clients and colleagues turned their backs on him, their expressions a mix of disgust and pity for the man who had so thoroughly disgraced himself. I always knew there was something off about him. One former colleague remarked to the press, shaking his head in disbelief, but I never imagined the depths of his depravity. Through it all, Todd maintained a stoic silence, his once boisterous personality replaced by a sullen, withdrawn demeanor. It was as if the weight of his misdeeds had finally crushed him, leaving behind a hollow shell of a man. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served, that the man who had so callously betrayed me had finally reaped the consequences of his actions. It was a small victory, to be sure, but one that filled me with a newfound sense of strength and resolve. The road ahead might still be long and uncertain, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of hope on the horizon. A chance to rebuild, to start anew, and to reclaim the life that had once been so cruelly stolen from me. The day my divorce from Todd was finally finalized, I expected to feel a sense of relief, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Instead, as I stood outside the courthouse, the crisp autumn breeze whipping through my hair, I was overcome by a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, and a profound sense of loss. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter in my life that had once held so much promise. The dreams Todd and I had shared, the future we had so carefully planned, all of it now reduced to a stack of legal documents and a judge's solemn pronouncement. "Are you okay?" Jenna's gentle voice broke through my reverie as she approached, her warm hand finding mine in a comforting embrace. I forced a smile, blinking back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "I'll be fine. It's just a lot to process." Jenna nodded in understanding, her own eyes shimmering with a mixture of sympathy and pride. "You've been through hell, Marlene, but you came out on the other side stronger than ever." Her words struck a chord within me, and I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The nights spent poring over financial records, the countless hours spent strategizing with Rachel, the confrontations with Todd and his mistresses. Each step had been a crucible, forging me into a woman I scarcely recognized. Gone was the naive, trusting wife who had so blindly followed the path laid out before her. In her place stood a woman tempered by the fires of betrayal, a warrior who had stared down the ugliest depths of human deceit and emerged victorious. As I looked back on the wreckage of my former life, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. The pain, the heartbreak, the rage, it had all been worth it, for it had revealed a strength within me that I never knew existed. "You're right, Jenna," I said, squeezing her hand in gratitude. "I am stronger now, and I have all of you to thank for that." A warm smile spread across her face, and in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, I would never be alone. The bonds forged in the fires of this ordeal were unbreakable, a sisterhood born of shared struggle and unwavering support. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself slowly but surely reclaiming the pieces of the life that had been shattered by Todd's betrayal. With the financial settlement secured, I was finally able to breathe freely, unburdened by the weight of his deceit. Bit by bit, I began to rebuild, exploring new interests and rekindling long-forgotten passions. The accounting firm I had once abandoned in pursuit of Todd's dreams welcomed me back with open arms, and I found myself relishing the familiar rhythm of crunching numbers and analyzing spreadsheets. But even as I immersed myself in work, a part of me yearned for something more. A connection. A chance to open my heart once again to the possibility of love and companionship. It was during a chance encounter at a local coffee shop that I met him. A kind-eyed stranger whose warm smile and easy laughter immediately put me at ease. As we fell into easy conversation, I found myself captivated by his gentle spirit and unwavering integrity, qualities that had been so sorely lacking in my previous relationship. Slowly, cautiously, I began to let my guard down, allowing myself to be vulnerable in a way I hadn't been in years. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that this time I would walk it with my eyes wide open, my heart fortified by the lessons of the past. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a future unfurling before me, one filled with promise and possibility. The shadows of Todd's betrayal still lingered, but they no longer held the power to consume me. I was free at last to embrace the life I had so longed for, a life lived on my own terms, guided by the unwavering strength that had carried me through the darkest of times. And as I stepped forward into the unknown, I did so with a renewed sense of purpose, my head held high and my spirit unbroken. Yet another exhausting day. I sighed as I kicked off my shoes and dropped my bag by the door. The aroma of Greg's famous spaghetti bolognese wafted from the kitchen, beckoning me. But before indulging, I had to check my email. I settled onto the couch, laptop in hand, scanning through the usual work updates and notifications. That's when an unfamiliar email from Greg's account caught my eye. Curiosity piqued. I opened it, only to be greeted by a fancy restaurant reservation. For two. My brow furrowed as I reread the details. This couldn't be right. Greg and I hadn't planned any special occasions. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach as doubts began to surface. "Greg?" I called out, my voice edged with tension. "Can you come here for a second?" Moments later, he emerged from the kitchen, that easy grin of his plastered across his face. "What's up, babe?" I studied him, searching for any tells, but his expression remained infuriatingly nonchalant. Wordlessly, I pivoted the laptop, the incriminating email on full display. Greg's features froze, just for an instant, before that familiar mask of innocence slipped back into place. "Oh, that? It's nothing, just a mix-up at work." "A mix-up?" I echoed, skepticism lacing my words. "For a romantic dinner reservation?" He shrugged, maintaining an air of indifference that grated on my every nerve. "You know how it is, the admin team gets things crossed sometimes." Every fiber of my being screamed that he was lying. But without proof, I knew pressing the issue would only lead to another circular argument, something we'd become all too familiar with lately. So I forced a tight smile and nodded. "If you say so." But even as we settled in for dinner, the lingering doubts gnawed at me. This wasn't just a simple mix-up. I could feel it in my bones. Greg was hiding something, and I intended to find out what. That night, I tossed and turned, Greg's deceit weighing heavily on my mind. As a social worker, I developed a keen sense for sniffing out lies. It came with the territory, and every instinct told me that my husband was hiding something big. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. While Greg was at work, I fired up my laptop and started digging. It didn't take long to locate his email account. We'd never been the type to hide passwords from each other, at least not until recently. I felt a pang of guilt as I scrolled through his inbox, but my conscience was quickly overshadowed by what I found, a lengthy email chain between Greg and someone saved only as GS. The contents made my blood run cold. Flirtatious banter, intimate details, and plans for secret rendezvous, all right there in black and white. My hands trembled as I copied the damning evidence onto a flash drive, knowing I needed to gather more proof. That's when I remembered the woman I'd seen Greg meeting a few weeks back. At the time, I'd brushed it off as a work contact, but now, I couldn't be so sure. With a renewed sense of determination, I grabbed my keys and headed out, tailing Greg from a discreet distance. I watched as he stopped at a quaint cafe, taking a seat at an intimate corner table. And then she arrived, a petite blonde with a dazzling smile that seemed all too familiar. My heart pounded in my ears as she leaned in, greeting Greg with an affectionate embrace. The way they held each other, the lingering glances, it was painfully intimate, like two lovers reuniting after a long absence. White-hot anger surged through my veins, followed swiftly by a bitter chill of betrayal. In that moment, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, my husband was having an affair. I wanted nothing more than to storm in and confront them both right then and there. But I knew that would only give Greg the upper hand, allowing him to twist the narrative as he so often did. No, I needed to play this smart, gather enough evidence to back him into a corner, leaving him nowhere to hide from the truth. Only then could I truly make him pay for his deceit. With a deep, steadying breath, I turned and headed back to my car, already formulating my next move. Greg had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, a mistake he would soon come to regret. A few days later, I found myself at a social workers networking event, the perfect opportunity to gather more intel on Greg's mystery woman. As I mingled with colleagues, a familiar face caught my eye. Mira Johnson, an old friend from college. "Marlena, I didn't know you'd be here," Mira exclaimed, pulling me into a warm embrace. Her eyes sparkled with genuine delight, a refreshing change from the fake smiles I'd grown accustomed to. "It's been too long," I replied with a smile, relaxing into the comforting familiarity of her presence. "We really need to catch up properly." Mira nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. Oh, you'll never guess who I ran into last week." My heart skipped a beat, wondering if fate was about to deliver the answers I'd been desperately seeking. "Who?" "Gwendolyn Smith," she exclaimed. "Remember her? That girl you two were always fighting over in our dorm days?" The name hit me like a punch to the gut, the memories flooding back in an instant. Gwendolyn, the blonde bombshell who'd made our college years a living hell with her petty jealousies and relentless pursuit of any guy who caught her eye, including my then-boyfriend, Derek. "Gwendolyn," I repeated, my tone laced with disdain. "What's she been up to these days?" Mira's expression shifted, her brow furrowing slightly. "Well, that's the thing. She seemed really chummy with your husband, Greg." The words hung in the air like a lead weight, confirming my worst suspicions. It all made sense now. The secret emails, the hushed meetings, the lingering glances. Greg's mysterious woman was none other than my old nemesis, Gwendolyn Smith. That lying, cheating snake, I spat, my hands balling into fists at my sides. He's been carrying on an affair with her this whole time. Mira's eyes widened in shock, her mouth falling open. "No way. Are you serious? Greg always seemed so devoted to you." I let out a humorless laugh, shaking my head bitterly. "Apparently not. That bastard's been playing me for a fool." Anger and humiliation washed over me in waves, threatening to drown me in their intensity. But I couldn't let the emotion consume me. Not yet. I needed to stay focused, to gather enough evidence to nail them both to the wall. "Mira, I need your help," I said, my voice low and urgent. "Tell me everything you know about Gwendolyn and her history with Greg." To her credit, Mira didn't hesitate, launching into a detailed account of their apparent closeness and Gwendolyn's thinly veiled disdain for me. With each new revelation, the pieces fell into place, painting a picture of a calculated, long-simmering scheme for revenge. By the time Mira finished, my jaw was set in grim determination. Greg and his mistress had made a fatal mistake in underestimating me, and they were about to pay dearly for it. That evening, I confronted Greg the moment he walked through the door. "We need to talk," I stated firmly, arms crossed over my chest. He barely batted an eye, shrugging off his jacket with a casual air that made my blood boil. Sure, what's up? Don't play dumb with me, I snapped, glaring at him. I know all about your little affair with Gwendolyn Smith. For a split second, Greg's mask slipped, his eyes widening ever so slightly, but he quickly recovered, letting out a dismissive scoff. Gwendolyn? Are you serious right now? That's just crazy talk. Is it? I challenged, stepping closer until we were nearly nose to nose. Because I have proof, Greg. Emails, eyewitness accounts, everything. His gaze hardened, jaw clenching. You've been spying on me? Real classy, Marlena. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. I exploded, my voice rising with each word. You're the one carrying on an affair behind my back. Greg's expression darkened, an ugly sneer twisting his features. Maybe if you hadn't been so wrapped up in your precious career, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for attention. The words hit me like a slap across the face, striking at the very insecurities he knew I harbored. For a moment I faltered, doubts creeping in, until I remembered the truth staring me in the face. Don't try to play the victim here, I spat, regaining my fire. This has nothing to do with me or my job. It's about you and your sick need for attention, no matter who you have to hurt in the process. Greg opened his mouth, likely to spew more venom, but I cut him off with a raised hand. Save it. I'm done listening to your lies. I stepped back, squaring my shoulders with renewed determination. From now on, I'll be fighting fire with fire. And when the smoke clears, you and your little mistress are going to wish you'd never crossed me. With that, I turned on my heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind me with a satisfying bang. I could feel the tide shifting, the paradigm between us irrevocably altered. Greg's betrayal had awakened a fury within me that wouldn't be sated until he paid the ultimate price. As I slid behind the wheel of my car, a plan began to take shape. If Greg wanted to play dirty, then so be it. But this time, I'd be holding all the cards. The first step? Gathering undeniable proof of his misdeeds, the kind that would leave no room for his usual manipulation tactics. I knew just where to plant a hidden camera to catch him in the act, red-handed. With a grim smile, I started the engine and peeled out of the driveway, my sights set on victory. Greg had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it. Permanently. The hidden camera was a stroke of genius. I'll give myself that. Within days, I had all the proof I needed of Greg's sordid affair, captured in damning high definition. I watched in sickened silence as the footage played out, Greg and Gwendolyn tangled in a heated embrace, their bodies moving in a sickening rhythm. But it was the conversation that followed which truly sealed their fates. We have to be more careful, Gwendolyn purred, running a perfectly manicured nail down Greg's bare chest. Marlena's already getting suspicious. Greg let out a derisive snort. Let her suspect all she wants. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. My grip tightened on the computer, knuckles straining white. Too late for what? As if reading my mind, Gwendolyn continued, You're sure you can pull strings to get me that promotion over her? I'd hate for all this. She gestured between them with a salacious grin. To be for nothing. Consider it done, Greg replied with an arrogant smirk, pulling her closer. Marlena's been living on borrowed time at that company. Once I tarnish her reputation, they'll have no choice but to overlook her for the job. White-hot fury blazed through me as the harsh reality crystallized. This wasn't just about broken vows. It was a calculated scheme to sabotage my career, my livelihood. To take everything I'd worked so hard to build and grind it into the dirt. In that moment, the floodgates burst open, unleashing a torrent of rage and betrayal unlike anything I'd ever felt. How could he? After everything we'd been through, everything I'd sacrificed to build this life with him, I wanted to scream, to hurl the laptop across the room until it shattered into a million pieces. But I couldn't, not yet. No, I needed to stay in control, to approach this strategically, like the clinical professional I was trained to be. Only then could I extract the revenge they so richly deserved. With a deep, steadying breath, I closed the laptop and began pacing, my mind already whirring with potential scenarios. I could take the evidence to the company, effectively torpedoing Greg's plans to undermine me. But that felt too impersonal, too corporate and detached. No, I needed a more visceral form of retribution. A public humiliation that would cut to the core of their arrogance and leave them disgraced, their reputations in tatters. A slow, wicked smile curved my lips as the perfect plan took shape. I would let them have their little dinner date, let them revel in their perceived victory, only to pull the rug out from under them in the most brutal, comprehensive way possible. Yes, Greg and Gwendolyn would get their comeuppance, all right, and by the time I was through with them, they'd be lucky if the ashes of their shattered lives were enough to fill a teacup. With a renewed sense of purpose, I began making arrangements, the gears of my meticulously crafted revenge already in motion. They wanted to play dirty? Fine by me. This was war, and I didn't intend to take any prisoners. The annual company gala was in full swing, a glittering affair filled with the city's social elite. Greg and Gwendolyn swept in like royalty, reveling in their perceived victory over me. Little did they know, I had a few surprises in store. As the evening progressed, I bided my time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, as Gwendolyn took the stage to accept her undeserved promotion, I made my move. Before we proceed, I called out, my voice ringing clear across the hushed ballroom. All eyes turned towards me, but I kept my gaze locked on the stunned expressions of my traitorous husband and his mistress. I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake, I continued, striding forward with purpose. You see, this promotion was meant for me until certain individuals conspired to undermine my reputation through lies and deceit. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd as I produced the sleek remote control, thumbing the button to project the incriminating footage onto the massive screen behind me. Greg and Gwendolyn's illicit affair played out in lurid detail, their hushed conversation about sabotaging my career echoing through the suddenly silent room. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the captive audience, my husband thought he could have his cake and eat it too, carrying on an affair while plotting to destroy my professional life in the process. I fixed my glare on Greg, who had gone deathly pale. Did you really think you could get away with it? That I'd just roll over and let you trample all over me? Before he could respond, I rounded on Gwendolyn, who looked fit to faint. And you were always jealous, weren't you? Petty and small, lashing out at anyone who dared outshine your fragile ego. With each biting word, I advanced on the pair until I stood mere feet away, reveling in their abject humiliation. Well, no more, I declared, my voice hardening to steel. This is where your manipulation ends. Turning back to Greg, I let the weight of his betrayal crash over me one final time. You have a choice, Greg. Resign, effective immediately, or I take this evidence to the authorities and pursue charges for corporate sabotage, fraud, you name it. His mouth worked soundlessly, the arrogant bravado he usually cloaked himself in shredded to tattered remnants. Well? I pressed, quirking an expectant brow. What's it going to be? In that moment, it was as if all the fight, all the pompous disdain, drained out of him, leaving a hollowed husk in its wake. His shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll resign, he muttered, unable to meet my gaze. A hushed gasp rippled through the crowd as I allowed myself a grim smile of satisfaction. With those 3 words, the power had shifted irrevocably, and he knew it. As security led the disgraced pair away, the ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Well-wishers and colleagues swarmed around me, offering congratulations and commendations for my integrity. But I brushed them all aside, focusing on a single thought: justice, finally served. And it tasted sweeter than I could have ever imagined. The gala's afterglow still lingered as the crowd thinned out, leaving only a smattering of revelers. I stood off to the side, savoring a well-earned glass of celebratory champagne. Marlena? The familiar voice made me turn to find my boss, Jonathan, regarding me with a mixture of awe and respect. I can't begin to express how impressed I am by the way you handled this situation. I offered him a gracious nod, the bitterness of Greg's betrayal finally starting to ebb. I only did what was necessary to protect the company's integrity. Jonathan shook his head firmly. It was more than that. It was an incredible show of character and resilience in the face of such underhanded tactics. His gaze turned solemn. I'm deeply sorry you had to endure such a violation of trust from someone you loved. The words hung heavy in the air, raw emotion welling up. But I swallowed it down, lifting my chin. Thank you. But that's all in the past now. I managed a small smile. I'm just glad the truth finally came to light. As are we all, Jonathan agreed with feeling, which is why I wanted you to be the first to know. The leadership position is yours if you'll accept it. You've more than proven your mettle." A surprised breath escaped me as the implication sank in. After everything, I was being rewarded with the very promotion that Snake Gwendolyn had schemed so ruthlessly to steal. Poetic justice indeed. "I thank you, Jonathan," I replied, equal parts humbled and elated. "You can count on me to give my full dedication to this new role." A smattering of cheers and applause broke out as word spread, a small crowd gathering to offer their congratulations. I accepted them all with as much grace as I could muster, still reeling slightly from the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. Eventually, the well-wishers dispersed, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As my gaze swept over the opulent ballroom, now devoid of its glamorous trappings, a profound sense of closure washed over me. This chapter of my life, the one marred by Greg's poisonous deception, was officially closed, and a new one beckoned, brimming with hard-earned promise and the respect of my peers. Perhaps for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed the tension to bleed from my shoulders, exhaling a deep, cleansing breath. Greg and his tawdry schemes held no power over me anymore. I was free. As for what lay ahead, only time would tell. But one thing was certain: I would greet it head-on, bolstered by an unshakable self-belief forged in the fires of sweet, well-deserved revenge. Yes, the future was looking brighter than ever, and I had every intention of basking in its warm, liberating glow. A few months later, I settled into the plush leather chair behind my new desk, surveying my freshly appointed office with a contented smile. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of settling into my hard-won leadership role, but the swirl of activity was an invigorating change of pace, one I welcomed with open arms. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. "Come in." Mira poked her head in, beaming. "Hey you, got a second?" "For you, always." I waved her inside. "What's up?" "Oh, not much," she said airily, sliding into the chair across from me. "Just thought I'd pop in and see how the big boss lady is adjusting to life at the top." I rolled my eyes good-naturedly. "Please, it's not that grand. Just a new set of challenges, that's all." "Uh-huh, and I'm sure you're tackling them all with your usual flair." Mira's expression turned serious. "Honestly, Marlena, I'm really proud of you for how you handled that whole mess with Greg. You could have easily crumbled, but instead you rose up stronger than ever." My chest swelled with a mixture of pride and humility. Coming from someone like Mira, whose friendship and support had been utterly invaluable these past months, the words carried profound weight. "Thank you," I replied simply, holding her gaze. "I couldn't have done it without you, and the other amazing women in my life who had my back." Mira nodded, seemingly satisfied before that familiar mischievous glint returned to her eye. "So, now that you're all professional and important, does this mean you'll be too busy for us regular folk?" I barked out a laugh. "Get out of here with that. You know you're stuck with me." "Good," she grinned, "because I wouldn't have it any other way. We celebratory drinks tonight? My treat?" "You're on," I agreed with a smile, already feeling the burdens of the day melting away at the prospect of an evening of laughter and commiseration with my closest friend. As Mira excused herself, I leaned back in my chair, basking in the quiet satisfaction of a life and career finally back on track. Greg's betrayal still stung, that much was undeniable, but the ache had faded into a dull throb, easier to compartmentalize with each passing day. A faint buzzing from my computer caught my attention, a news alert with Greg's name in the headline. I clicked through, unsurprised to find it was another sordid account of his continued downward spiral in the aftermath of our very public, very messy split. Gwendolyn's name featured prominently as well, cementing her role as his partner in undoing. According to the reports, she'd relocated to someplace far away, her misguided ambition to take what wasn't hers, ultimately her own undoing. I exhaled a soft snort, shaking my head. Let them wallow in the squalor of their self-made misery. As for me, I was too busy thriving to spare them a second thought. A memo caught my eye, reminding me of the upcoming mentorship program orientation. I felt a swell of pride coursing through me. Nurturing the next generation, passing along the hard-won wisdom I'd accrued over the years. It was an honor and responsibility I didn't take lightly. Who knew? Maybe by paying it forward, I could help spare a few bright young minds from falling into the same traps I once had. If my own trials and tribulations could serve as a cautionary tale, a message of perseverance against all odds, then it would have all been worth it. Yes, this was the start of an incredible new chapter, I mused, energized by the possibilities that lay ahead. One forged through the flames of heartbreak and betrayal, certainly, but also one tempered by the resilience that had seen me through to the other side. And as I closed my eyes and drew a grounding breath, I silently vowed to conduct myself with the same integrity and purpose that had been my saving grace all along. No matter what storms may come, I would face them head-on and emerge victorious. This, I could finally say with conviction, was only the beginning.